In fact, if a person is a woman, then she needs to find a good man and get married as soon as possible. Everyone was discussing the news about the singer Christina and her wedding with some count. If it's a count, she'll become an aristocrat and be able to visit the castle. After all, she's an orphan and a commoner, and she's very lucky to have her husband. They even invited a wizard to the wedding, a rich, kind, and handsome man. Christina is very lucky to have such a man. One of the girls is already 22 and will be considered a spinster in a year. They say this is the best time to get your life together. It's wedding season, and if you bite it, everything will be bad, even if a girl is only 20. In this kingdom, she will be burned for being an old maid. The girl did not understand at all why these two women were staring at her so intently. For 32 years, Melissa Sassatanya had heard constant criticism. The girl said it was delicious, and then she said that she would come again after the good sales. The woman tried to stop her, but her friend told her to just ignore her. This is an old story, and there have been many rumors about it. This woman never married in her entire life because her family went bankrupt. Barantanya's family fell apart, leaving them penniless. Even without money, nobles remain nobles. There were no rumors or weddings. It's all because there was no person she liked. She was very surprised when she saw a carriage right in front of someone else's store. A gold ornament. She was shocked by how rich it was. She was very annoyed that he parked the carriage right in front of her shop. A subordinate met her and asked her mistress if she had had a good lunch. When she saw the lady's reaction, she thought that she didn't like today's food. The lady said that everything was fine and the food was normal, as always. Why does the mistress's face seem gloomy? The mistress didn't understand why she was talking like that, because Melissa Sassa thought she'd always been like that. Jewelry is better than men. In this world, all dreamers are impractical, so she thinks it is natural, without unnecessary words and without deception, without the desire to correct something so excellent. Melissa Sassa showed off star rubies from Mount Viren. It's a bit small, but there are no inclusions and the color is very good. That's why the lady thinks that Balza's order is the most important of those received. Melissa Sassa didn't understand the girl's reaction. She was going to tell her as soon as she returned, but she didn't have time. The guest is already here, and he is the owner of that very carriage. Even in the capital, such a carriage is rare, so she doesn't understand at all who it is. Perhaps a foreign merchant or an opera singer. There's so much unexpectedness in this world. A name every citizen of the Kingdom of Annabelle hears at least once a day. The #1 groom, who makes the front pages of newspapers every day. This is the Duke of Winterfeld, Louis of Winterfeld. The man noticed that she had been having quite a long lunch. It has nothing to do with her. But after hard work comes the feeling of hunger. This Duke truly has a handsome appearance. He is also immensely wealthy and holds a high position. Good character. But she doesn't know if it's all true. Melissa Sassa didn't understand at all why he was grinning at her like that. If such a man had proposed to her, and not another fool, then everything would have been different. If it had been a man who was with her, the rumors would have disappeared. Louis noticed that the lady was looking so intently that he was speechless. So he asked her to soften her face. The lady said that she always looks like this when she works. She came here for the assessment, after all. Melissa Sassa didn't quite understand him. Louis asked if the secretary had told her it was a private matter. He will be called the last scoundrel if the noble daughter of Baron Tanya, whom he is courting, makes such a menacing expression. The man presented her with a formal proposal of marriage and asked her to be his bride. 2 years later, they would secretly divorce. The lady was in complete shock. Melissa Sassa froze in shock, and the gentleman began asking her if she was okay. Louis said that if she accepted his proposal, he promised to pay appropriate compensation. The lady said that suddenly getting married and getting divorced is somehow not very good. After the divorce, she would be paid compensation. He asked, how about 30% of the Duke's property? If she doesn't trust him, a magical contract can be drawn up. This look of his says that he is serious, and the girl was shocked with you, that this man is in his right mind. Melissa Sassa apologized, but he was in the wrong place. This situation is obvious and banal. Nobles, subject to strict marriage requirements, use partners without influence for political marriages. It's as clear as day, which is why she doesn't want to agree to marry him. She doesn't know who the Duke's real partner is. A maid? or just a commoner widow. But she doesn't like the idea of being someone's replacement. After this, Louis started laughing very loudly, but the lady didn't understand what was so funny. The Duke said nothing, and he thought she had misunderstood him. He admits that he thought that if he offered a price first, he could explain the rest later. He wanted to cheat a little. I regret my actions. It was really a misunderstanding, and he doesn't have any affairs on the side. The Duke did not come here to solve the problem of his low-born mistress with the help of a fictitious marriage. Louis gives his word that if she marries him, in advance of the contract, he will perform his marital duty as she wishes. She won't have to listen to other people's gossip spread by bored noblewomen. Melissa Sasa is increasingly confused. With his title, he can choose any candidate, but for some reason, he came to her. A marriage contract is only drawn up when there is a benefit for both parties. After all, she is nothing more than a poor aristocrat who has become an old maid, and that is not the best choice in the social world. In exchange for a 2-year sham marriage, she will receive 30% of Winterfeld's fortune. It's all because she meets all the criteria, the country's best jewelry appraiser, yet at the same time, an unmarried woman and an aristocrat. As far as he knows, the lady is the only one who meets all these requirements. The lady began to believe that it had something to do with the jewelry, and he confirmed it. This information has not yet been disclosed, but in a year, the royal family will build a treasury for itself. Only nobles will be able to attend the opening ceremony, and among the invited appraisers, she is the most competent person. The gentleman wanted to say what would be in this treasury. She suddenly stopped talking and asked what that noise was. Some woman called Mrs. Tanya and asked her for help. The lady asked for forgiveness and said that it seemed that someone had come to see her, so she just wanted the gentleman to wait. The woman was on her knees in tears, calling for the mistress. Her secretary said that such behavior was unacceptable here. Melissa Sasa asked Julie what the noise was. Her secretary said that some crazy woman had burst in and was making noise. Later, another man came in and didn't understand who had blocked the entrance with the carriage. Their lady ordered a necklace from this store. The secretary immediately went to give it to him. The lady had no idea what was going on or who this woman was, but she still thought it was worth listening to her. The Duke decided to drive away so that the carriage would not get in the way. The woman apologized for the inconvenience. The only person who could help her was Miss Tanya. The lady said that everything was fine. Anything can happen during work, but she was probably discussing an important deal with the gentleman. Moreover, her client is Duke Louis of Winterfeld himself, a very respected gentleman, but she has nothing to worry about because he will quietly wait until the lady finishes her business. Melissa Sasa thought it would take a long time, so she suggested putting them off for a conversation. Louis noted that this was a great opportunity to see the appraiser he wanted to hire demonstrate his skills, so he couldn't pass it up. Louis assured her there was nothing to worry about because he wouldn't interfere. She should think of him as a strong and handsome assistant. Then the lady decided to listen to the story of the woman who burst into her room in tears. This woman is a maid working for the family of Viscount Ronald. She was recently promoted to cleaning the lady's dressing room and jewelry box. Her mistress said they were brought from across the sea by Oswald. There was also a ring with a rare emerald, but one day it was discovered that the emerald in the lady's ring was a fake. The Duke said that if it was Oswald's emerald, emeralds are precious gemstones in their own right, but their price will vary depending on their origin, regardless of the fact that they are from the same category. If it is an Oswald stone, due to its color and unique inclusions, it is considered the most valuable. That's true. But this emerald unexpectedly turned out to be a fake. It looks like someone stole the real thing and replaced it with an artificial stone. The Duke asked if she really thought it was the work of a thief. Perhaps, but the only piece of jewelry stolen was a ring. The mistress's room is not a side room, so if a thief had entered there, he would have definitely been noticed, but no one saw strangers. In addition, the jewelry box contains a lot of expensive things, and few people know where it is kept. Then, the most likely suspect is the maid. The woman said that everything was exactly like that, because the whole circle was leaning towards her. However, it's not her, and it's definitely not true, because she's been working as a maid in this house since she was 12 years old. The woman swore that she had never done this and was not guilty, because stealing things from the mistress's room, which she had used for so long, did not even sound credible, but no one believes her story. At this rate, she won't get the money and will be thrown out of the mansion. After all, This story is for the investigators, not the jeweler. This woman is a commoner, and if the investigation continues, it will be clear whose side the court will take. The only person she can trust is Mrs. Tanya. After all, she is a renowned appraiser, which reveals the sources of precious stones, and she heard that she had already dealt with something similar. So she begs for help. The Duke of Taxes, realizing it was a very sad story, asked his mistress what she intended to do. But even if she wants to help, she won't be able to learn anything just by hearing the story and without examining the real stone. She wants to help with all her heart, but if it concerns Viscount Ronald, who is the largest supplier of spices, and even if she asks to see the jewelry, she doesn't think the couple will agree. So the gentleman asked, what if he gave her a helping hand? The Viscount was in complete shock when he saw that the Duke himself had come to see him. He was so surprised when he found out that he suddenly decided to visit them. Louis was shocked with you that he had disturbed them so much, but the gentleman said that this was certainly not true. The Viscount is known for his arrogance, but now he looks more like a dog wagging his tail. The Viscountess told them to sit back and relax. She sees the Duke in front of her, as well as the Baron's daughter. Louis said that she was his escort, and the lady decided to ask if they were dating. Therefore, the gentleman said that they were business partners for now, and so the lady immediately provided her daughter. The mayor of Ranilda was very glad to see the gentleman, and was just like she had been spending the summer with him. Melissa Sassa was in shock, or when she asked the maid where she had been, because a precious guest had arrived. The mistress ordered her to make some tea immediately, and the gentleman decided to ask why he had come. He thought the Duke was interested in his proposal. The gentleman understood perfectly well what he was talking about, and then I remembered that he had said he wanted to attract the attention of wealthier customers to the spice shop. Of course, the gentleman has not forgotten, and if he wants, he can listen to him. The Duke reported that he had heard that he had been robbed. They confusedly confirmed this. The gentleman heard that they had the Oswald emerald. They were very scared, but the Viscount immediately came to his senses and said that he had been there, but had been replaced. Louis told the gentleman that he need not worry, because as he knew, he had plenty of jewelry. He's just curious, because he knows a lot about jewelry, but not about emeralds. He would like to look at it. He is not going to ask to give him this decoration, so he can just show it. Melissa Sassa did not understand why he was winking. The master ordered the maid to go and bring the ring. The gentleman thought he had done a good job. It's good when you have power. Things go smoothly. Meanwhile, the maid brought the jewelry, and the master decided to look at it. After that, he showed this decoration to Melissa Sassa, and you asked her what she thought. The Viscount decided to ask the Duke who this lady was. Louis said that this is his respected appraiser. Her appraisal skills are the best in the country. He was shocked with you that the gentleman did not know that the Winterfields were engaged in the production of luxury goods. But if everything goes well, then she can be called his beloved. The girl was simply horrified when she heard about this, and the gentleman whispered to her that she would have to play along a little to get them to bite. So she laughed, and the gentleman remarked that he would like to hear an expert's opinion. Not everyone has the opportunity to use her services, so he asked the gentleman how he felt about it. Melissa Sassa decided to get to work and, putting on gloves, began to examine the ring. There was complete silence, and the lady announced that it was a duplicate. The girl was very surprised, and the Duke asked if she meant it was a fake, but that wasn't true. The stone was real. Marie realized it was genuine. She was perplexed, but the lady said that this is not true, because it is just a fake. But the lady said it was a real emerald. Melissa Sassa said it didn't matter whether the stone was real or not. It doesn't matter whether this emerald is an Oswald or not. The surface of the doublet is covered with a thin layer of high-quality stone, and a thick layer of low-grade gemstones is added to increase the weight. This is a relatively simple imitation technique. Just test the glue on the side. If your client is hidden by a setting, it's difficult to see with the naked eye. Liquid, gas, and heat treatments have created a high-quality emerald imitation through layering. All the minor scratches are filled with green paste, but there's still something missing. She can't understand how he managed to glue everything together so neatly without using any adhesive. The Duke asked the lady if this information was accurate. The ring was definitely a fake, but something was troubling her. Melissa Sassa asked the gentleman if they had really bought the ring in a jewelry store, and inquired which one. The Viscount bought it through intermediaries with whom he has been working for a long time. It was a new jewelry store, just starting to gain popularity, and he couldn't even imagine that he would be sold a fake. The Duke said that meant they knew it wasn't the Oswald emerald. Having concealed the fact, they brought it and showed it off as if it were no problem. The gentleman apologized to the Duke for these circumstances. The lady wasn't quite sure what the circumstances were. The Vikinist said that soon after the stone's acquisition, her daughter was invited to Princess Blanche's salon. She wanted to wear the Oswald emerald ring, and they were going to steal the show. Melissa Sasa insisted that jewelry with a genuine Oswald emerald wasn't all that common. Almost all the stones available on the market were monopolized by high-ranking aristocratic families. Even if they don't have enough money, they always need good connections. And that means they slandered the maid. And all this to avoid embarrassment. To avoid the words, "it was originally a fake," they said they were robbed. The Duke understood with everyone how they could do this, and why the Viscount was so surprised. He also did not understand. High-quality Oswald emeralds are monopolized by high-ranking noble families. In other words, if he wants something, it will definitely belong to the Duke. Now Louis wants him to tell the truth about what really happened. The tray fell from the maid's hands. She fell to her knees and asked if it was true. She grabbed the Viscount's daughter's dress and said that they knew from the very beginning that she was innocent. Marie noted that it was impossible to fool people forever, so she asked her for forgiveness. The maid was completely at a loss to understand how this could be. The Duke remarked that it seemed business with the client was over. Melissa Sasa gave them the fake ring and said she would like to borrow it for one day. The Duke was shocked that it was such a well-made fake, and he found it strange. He is not an appraiser, but the Viscount's family is rich and is fond of collecting jewelry. At first, she really thought it was an original. The ring was made really well. The special feature of this doublet is the transparent jewelry resin, and she believes that the product was created with the help of magic. This was done deliberately to conceal the deception. An item of such quality cannot be sold on the market, so she wants to know whether it was a coincidence or not. The Duke understood her and also decided to offer her a ride in the carriage. She couldn't understand how anyone could sell a counterfeit to a customer who rode in such a carriage. It was simply absurd. It turns out that the gentleman will seem to them like a simpleton with a large sum of money. A simpleton with a large sum of money. That's exactly what it looks like. This is a very difficult order, which means that the lady will not take it with her. Melissa Sasa thought he would follow her himself, and he said that, of course, that wasn't the case. He'll have problems like this because he might change his hair color. After that, he changed his hair color and asked how he was mistress. She did not understand at all what had just happened, and the gentleman did not understand why she turned away from him. He asked her to go with him. Melissa Sasa didn't even know she liked brunettes so much. They were met in an expensive jewelry store and were shocked by how sparkling the jewelry was. Melissa Sasa was surprised that this was the same store, because it was bigger than it seemed. Exquisite cut. Nice design. This is a melee and uncut sapphire, and these earrings are made of rose quartz, cut into the shape of a heart. The Duke asked her if she liked the earrings. The lady wasn't sure, but they seemed beautiful. But she doesn't quite understand what the catch is, and perhaps she missed something. The Duke noted that it was difficult to figure things out just by looking at them. Melissa Sasa pointed out that that wasn't the issue. Something was definitely not right. All the jewelry looks real, but there is nothing valuable here like the Oswald emerald. Of course, all these decorations are made of rough stone. They are attractive and cute, but seeing the price of these goods, doing such painstaking work, even with the help of magic, is unprofitable. One piece of jewelry costs $400,000, and that means there are no precious or rare stones here that can be purchased for a large sum of money. These are simple accessories for ordinary people. It's foolish to think that a jewelry store of this size sells expensive goods at all. They select worthy buyers. Melissa Sasa noted that they need to go to the right place if they want to see the jewelry. The Duke remarked, "Why shouldn't they go in there? It says VIP room. They only want to deal with nobles, or the salespeople in the store are watching the customer. If a person doesn't look like someone who can spend a decent amount of money, then he won't be invited to visit the VIP room." If she had known this, she would have dressed in more appropriate clothes. It seems the disguise is working. A consultant approached them and pointed out that if they were a couple, The men's department was on that side. That's right. Right now, he's the very picture of wealth. So the Duke confirmed it, and the consultant started asking if they liked anything here. And they also didn't have to worry, because they had only looked at the products on display. They can also go inside. Melissa Sass asked to wait, and the Duke asked if there was another way to get there, especially since no one would recognize him. The Duke of Winterfeld is known for his blonde hair. Rumors and prejudices influence people's opinions more than you might think, so she shouldn't worry too much. They can look at the best of it, the pride of their store. They shouldn't rush their choice. On the table before them stood the Lionel Blood Ruby, a star sapphire weighing over 10 carats. The lady doesn't think it's him, but she still decided to look, because it looks very similar to the Oswald emerald. The Duke remarked that it looked magnificent, and asked the lady how she liked the items. Melissa Sasso wasn't sure any of them were real. This opal was quite realistic. The woman next to her remarked that she had a very keen eye. This is an opal from Mount Ulike. She can see the honeycomb pattern, and it truly is very beautiful. The coating is undoubtedly made of high-quality honeycomb opal, but it's still not substantial, being a doublet. The lady needs a thorough examination so that she can be 100% sure. Melissa Sassa thinks it was made in the same way as that emerald. Besides, this design is very interesting. So the lady asked if she could find out who the designer of this pendant was. The consultant didn't understand what she was talking about, and the lady said that she wanted to buy a set to go with this pendant. She wants the rest of the items to be from the same designer, so they ask if that's possible. Well, they're not allowed to disclose an employee's personal information, but if she chooses the jewelry, the Duke asked if he could get a recommendation from the chief appraiser of their jewelry store, and then he asked who the owner was. The seller didn't even know what to say, and began to get very worried. She didn't know who it was. And suddenly, a man came up to them and asked Louis what he was doing there. I didn't expect to see him in such a place. The Duke stood up and greeted His Highness. In the end, their plan failed because of a man he didn't want to meet at all. This wasn't just an unwanted encounter. He was His Highness's cousin. The girl didn't even know it. The Duke remarked that it was obvious that the Duke's family were related to the royal family. Melissa Sassa already felt unsuitable for his status. The Duke thought she wanted to buy that opal, so he thought she was sad to leave like that. Melissa Sassa said everything was fine. And besides, it wasn't that she couldn't afford it. There was a small mark on the back of the pendant. It seems like the sellers aren't doing their jobs at all since they didn't notice him. Some artists, one might say, sign their works this way, but it is unclear whether it is possible to find such a designer using initials. It will be like looking for grain in the desert. It will be difficult for her to do it all alone, and this makes her wary. Melissa Sassa has no idea how to solve this problem. In any case, the work is finished for today, so the lady wants to get back to the shop as quickly as possible. The Duke remarked that they had had a great time today. He was also clearly convinced of Baroness Tanya's superb craftsmanship. The lady was surprised, because she had not done anything special. The gentleman did not understand what she meant, because today, having been her assistant, he was convinced of her talent. He also added that he didn't care about her age. He told her that it didn't matter that she wasn't young. It's late, so he'll be leaving and give her his business card. He didn't think he should leave the lady without proper guarantees for too long, so he kissed her hand. He also said that this was an invitation and asked her to come whenever she wanted, and he would let her in with him. True, he'll go blonde again. The lady stood there, perplexed, and then she said that she was absolutely not going to come to him. The Duke only smiled at her. When she left, the Duke watched her, and in his mind was her face when she said she would not come. She will definitely come, because she hasn't finished today's business. The Duke acquired the very necklace she was looking at and was shocked with you that she decided to take all this on herself. 3 days later, she finally arrived and was immediately greeted by a man. It was the butler who asked if she was the master's guest, and then he immediately informed the master that a guest had arrived for an invitation. The Duke ordered her to be taken to the drawing room, and then told her to prepare the garden and arrange a meeting there. The butler was surprised. The gentleman remarked that she liked beautiful places. The master also asked if they had found the person who made it. The servant inquired if he was talking about the maker of that very opal. The gentleman was very glad to see the lady, and when he came up, he kissed her hand. He knew she was coming, so he winked at her. He winked at her again. The Duke noticed that her expression suggested that he was winking at her again. Melissa Sassa did not understand at all how he knew about this, and believed that he was a telepath. Besides, she doesn't like blondes. Melissa Sasa wasn't quite sure what he meant. She was embarrassed and said that her preferences and tastes were completely unrelated to work. The gentleman noted that she could not have forgotten about it, since only 3 days had passed. She definitely remembers. He has no choice but to propose to her again. Melissa Sasa asked him to stop and believed that this was why he called her again. She was shocked that he was talking about the wedding. She saw and believed that he wanted to find the criminal who was counterfeiting the precious stones. In general, this was also part of his plans, and from that moment on, she had to keep everything a secret. He hoped she would agree to this. 30 years ago, a bloody struggle for the throne was waged in Annabelle's kingdom. The current ruler, Jake Annabelle, was the 3rd son of a concubine, but from an early age, he was greedy, driven, and cruel. 3 of his 5 brothers died at Jake's hands. The princess, who was still very young, was married off to a rich man. The 5th principal, who had not originally intended to enter the battle for the crown, renounced it himself. He stated that he would remain with the title of Duke of Winterfeld, and I wanted to conflict with my brother and, as proof of this, he would give the royal family the most valuable diamonds mined in the Winterfeld estate. Then he will make a new crown from the stones he was given, for it is soaked in blood. It was then that new attributes of royal power were created, both then and now. The Duchy of Winterfeld is distinguished by its exceptional skill in diamond processing. The oath of allegiance of the ducal house of Winterfeld was not a weighty proof of loyalty for the king. Therefore, the stone that the Duke presented to the king is the largest and rarest red diamond in the entire history and mining of the duchy. Melissa Sasa didn't know the details of the fight for the throne, but she knows about the red diamond, which is proof of the Duke's loyalty to the royal family. If she is a citizen of the Annabelle Kingdom, then she has known about it since childhood. However, something happened. He became a duke 3 years ago. The ducal house has one secret. His father revealed it to him before his death. Father told Louis that he was sorry to leave this burden on him. The Winterfelds have secrets that must be kept. The crown given to the royal family was a fake. The lady was shocked, and Louis asked the Baroness to be quieter. This wasn't intentional. This red diamond is very rare. Time If the nickname, who took on the order, said that he tried to make a test sample using imitation gemstones before moving on to the original. The lady noted that it turns out that the sample and the real crown were swapped. The father later found out, but too much time had passed since the crown was handed over to the royal family. The crown is a symbol of royal power, and if it turns out that the king has been using a fake crown for many years, it will never be forgiven. That's why their family has been keeping a secret for almost 30 years, and that's why he dragged her into this dangerous game. Once the story about the royal treasure comes to light, the Duke will be executed immediately. On the other hand, if you take advantage of this opportunity and replace the fake crown with the real one when opening the treasury, the problem will disappear by itself. The lady noted that if she seemed to be cooperating, then it was interesting to see what he would do in this situation. The gentleman said that in that case, he would look for another solution to this problem. First of all, Louis places great hopes on the lady, and besides, he thinks she likes him. This made Melissa Sasa feel embarrassed. Louis noted that she was difficult to understand, so even if she refused, I wonder if she would be able to keep this secret. Melissa Sasa didn't understand what the big deal was. She understood his circumstances, but they don't quite understand what this has to do with finding a master who counterfeits precious stones. After that day, Louis conducted a study by interviewing people. It turned out that this jewelry store was using counterfeit documents issued in the name of a stranger. The gentleman was shocked and did not understand whether this made sense. Louis Winterfeld, who owns almost all the jewelry stores in the country, walked into his store by chance without any specific purpose. His Highness didn't understand the point of all this. Someone simply knocked on the door. The king did not quite understand what else was needed from him. It was Princess Blanche. The gentleman had no idea what Asarin was doing there. The girl hesitantly said she had one request for him. The king was surprised that she was asking him for help, and believed that the sun had risen in the west today. He asked what she needed. Ironically, he assumed it was a new dress or jewelry. If she needed anything, she should tell her subordinates. Well, the lady said she wanted him to go with her to a reception. The gentleman was surprised, but the princess meant a reception at Countess Gazella's salon. The king will not be able to visit him due to business, and thinks that she already knows that he has sent a refusal in response to the invitation. The princess came to him with a request, and asked him to reverse his decision. The girl told His Highness that more than 6 months had passed since their joint trip abroad. This girl greatly irritated him. The servant said that even if he didn't like it, he asked that he at least this once uphold Princess Blanche's authority. As the princess said, 6 months is enough time for rumors of his discord to begin to spread. The more he polishes a stone, the brighter it shines. And so it is in politics. He was already preparing to ascend to the throne. Princess Blanche's support was very important, so the man said there was nothing he could do. And he asked the princess to tell her secretary her schedule when she left. He'll give in just this once. He's busy. Meanwhile, Melissa Sassa was very tired. Her secretary asked how her conversation had gone. The lady was grateful for the tea and informed him that she had been offered a job, but she refused because it was not something she could afford. No matter how tempting this offer is, her store is the most important thing to her. Some might call her a fool for turning down an offer that could change her life for the better. But be it the power of the Duke or connections with a high-ranking nobleman, the lady asked for forgiveness and promised that she would pretend that she had never heard everything he told her. Drinking tea in her company was wonderful for the gentleman. He also asked if he could ask why she had refused. If Melissa Sassa accepts his offer, she will have to leave the store unattended for the duration of the contract. She would be allowed to participate in royal ceremonies if she became a duchess. Well, in that case, she won't be able to run her store personally. So she can't. 10 years after her family went bankrupt, and she turned down everyone who proposed to her. She put all her effort into opening her store for 10 years. She feels awkward comparing a simple jewelry store to a large aristocratic family, but she values her store as much as he values his duchy. It's like a child that she raised, so she's not ready to abandon her brainchild for the sake of his interests. No matter how rich and grateful he is, she loves her work more. The gentleman agreed with her and said that he respected her decision. She still refused. Now she decided to take the job, so she asked the secretary if there was anything while she was away. The lady asked if there was anything that needed to be dealt with urgently. The secretary quickly announced that yes, and added that Countess Gazella had sent her an invitation. Melissa Sassa asked what kind of invitation it was, and the secretary said that she was inviting her to attend a reception for jewelry lovers. The countess is going to show off the famous relic at this reception. Your margin is fine. The styling hasn't come loose. Everything will be fine. It's time for the lady to get going. The secretary said she was paying a lot of attention to her clothes today. After all, she usually says that she just needs to look neat. Melissa Sassa says this every time. The lady said that the people they will meet today are aristocrats and that they will observe their behavior, evaluate their clothes, and observe their manners. Although she has lost her former position, Countess Gazella has been their regular client for a long time. The secretary was surprised and asked again. The lady confirmed it once again. She is one of the few in Soviet society who is kind to her. The count's wife is struggling to maintain the family's tarnished reputation. Unlike the count, who has no ambitions other than his addiction to alcohol, the countess is smart and kind. It is a salon party and a public display of jewelry, organized to strengthen the family's status. The secretary remarked that no matter how faithful a wife she was, she would prefer to start her own business than fight for the position of her incompetent husband. Melissa Sassa told her to look that way. Times are changing, and this also applies to the conservative society of aristocrats. These days, women are often seen participating in hunting competitions. Well, having a job is a different matter. Aristocrats don't run businesses in their own names. They also do not engage in any professional activities. Only through marriage can a woman express herself in society. This is a long-standing tradition in the kingdom of Annabelle. Whether a woman is a member of the royal family or from an aristocratic family, a working woman is equated with an opponent who speaks out against established traditions. The secretary noted that her mistress had succeeded and had become the best jewelry appraiser in the country. That's not what Melissa Sassa meant at all. Conservatives hate her, no matter her skills. After all, she is in the jewelry business. The only downside to that job being that it's impossible to cut all ties with the aristocracy. Melissa Sassa suggested that the secretary should leave already, because they had arrived. She overheard a conversation about how the man thought Gisella's family didn't have much money, but the level of the party was quite good. They also talked about the family heirloom and thought that if their jewelry was really that beautiful, they would have sold it earlier. Luxurious dresses and expensive desserts are complemented by jewelry with precious stones. This fashion is especially widespread among aristocrats. It is considered bad form to miss social events organized by such high-ranking nobles as Countess Gisela. Suddenly, one of the aristocrats stepped on the lady's dress. The secretary immediately grabbed her, but the other woman claimed it was an accident. The secretary wanted to be indignant, but her mistress asked her to ignore it and pretend not to notice anything. The girl could not come to terms with this, because this woman did it on purpose. Melissa Sasa thought that wasting time and nerves on such aristocratic upstarts was not much of a pleasure. If you don't react, they'll stop. The butler noticed Lady Melissa Sasa and announced that he would take her inside. Melissa Sasa said the secretary that they were here to work, and she should remember that. And then she suggested we go inside. The lady looks so beautiful today. These earrings are by Crystal Roberts. Among the people who came to the reception, there is no lady to compare with the princess. One of the ladies heard that she arrived today with His Highness the Crown Prince, and surely His Highness constantly talks about the beauty of the princess. Suddenly, the Crown Prince approached Asaran, and he believed that she should humbly thank him for coming here, as she asked. He was outraged that she had dragged him here to sit on the sidelines. The lady began to apologize, and he quickly said that he understood her, and then the gentleman added that there was nothing interesting about her beauty. He continued to grumble. This prince has already seen enough of flirting women, music, and dessert, so he's wondering when the highlight of the evening will arrive. The princess did not quite understand what he was talking about, but the prince meant jewelry, since it was she who said that the family heirloom of the 40-year-old countess would be exhibited. Black opal. They even hired a renowned expert in the field of appraising and certifying precious stones, as well as semi-precious and ornamental stones. The man realized he recognized the woman. Meanwhile, the countess noticed Melissa Sasa and was overjoyed to see her. She approached her and thanked her for coming, because she invited her because she wanted to get her grant. A man approached her and remarked that she was spending money to invite people like her, and said that this opal was so important. It was the countess's husband, and so she asked him what was wrong, because today was a very good day. The countess told the lady that there was no need to worry about his chatter. The butler will soon take the jewels out of the safe, so she can do her job. Melissa Sasa looked around, and the countess turned to the ladies and gentlemen and noted that they had been waiting for this moment for quite a long time. The countess is pleased to present what they have all gathered here for. Finally, they will all see the family heirloom that they have hidden for 40 years. By revealing it, the countess is trying to demonstrate her power and attract the attention of investors. The count's affairs have been very bad lately. However, his family has a long history. It must be a truly rare item, and it must shine incredibly brightly. This is unexpected. The crown prince thought that she was an aristocrat since she came with Louis Winterfeld, and she's just a visiting specialist. Suddenly, the butler started running toward the lady. The countess did not understand what had happened, because the guests were already tired of waiting. The servant reported that something irreparable had happened, and that the family heirloom was in fact not real. The lady asked what he was talking about and whether it was true, because she could not believe that the relic was just an ordinary stone. There's no shine at all. It's no different from an ordinary cobblestone, so the lady has no idea what to do. How this happened is also unclear, and whether they were all bluffing. According to rumors, the count's family heirloom is not actually genuine. The count pounced on his wife and started shouting at her, asking why she had done this at all. He was categorically against it, and now they became a laughingstock. He started beating her right in front of everyone. The servant approached the master and reported that the stone had stopped shining and the family heirloom was lost. Melissa said that wasn't true. The count didn't understand what that had to do with it. The count's wife called her, but there were no jewels, so the appraiser had no business here, and she could return. Melissa assured His Highness he was wrong. The man didn't understand what was going on, since he had ordered her to go, but the lady insisted the relic was not lost. The count didn't understand at all what was going on. If it really was a stone, then she thought he wouldn't mind if she borrowed it for a while. The lady asked to present to everyone the family heirloom of the Gisela family. Melissa will save the honor of the count's house and reveal the radiance of the stone. The count said he didn't need that damn cobblestone, so she could do whatever she wanted with it. If everything does not go as promised, then she will be defeated. Melissa agreed to this, and said that he would have to apologize to his wife if she succeeded. The game was completely shocked and asked what she had just said. The population found it amusing to watch all of this. He doesn't know what he was going to answer, but he's surprised that the Count doesn't think he should agree. The man was very confused when he saw the gentleman in front of him. He invited the crown prince and his bride, and then showed his ignorance right in front of them, so he must answer for his actions. No matter how drunk he was, the assessor must do this too. Glasses and a high bun, minimal makeup, no perfume. This woman is not particularly beautiful and looks like an old woman. Therefore, he does not understand at all how this woman became the companion of the Duke of Winterfeld. Getting involved in such conflicts is always a highly dubious undertaking. The proposal she just made was presumptuous, but sir, I'm curious how she's going to turn this boulder into a gem. The prince simply thought she was mistaken. He genuinely wondered if it was even possible to make a valuable family heirloom out of it. Everyone has seen this piece of cobblestone that has lost its shine. If there is a possibility of restoring the relic, you would most likely find this a fitting event, symbolizing the restoration of the reputation of the Count Gisela family. It could be a simple coincidence, or a carefully planned political ploy. Melissa said she understood everything. She also turned to the mistress and asked if she could lend her some of the servants. A flat dish, warm water, and a clean cotton cloth. The lady also called Julie. She asked the secretary to go to the store because she needed it. Meanwhile, the Duke was practicing fencing and remarked that it was a good fight. The servant asked the master whether he really did not need to attend Countess Gisela's reception. They reported that Melissa Sassatania would be there, but his presence at the Countess's could complicate the situation. Besides, the gentleman has more important matters to attend to. Although he had told the lady back then that he would seek a new solution to the problem, but in reality, there will be no better option. When a person opposes the imperial family, magic and money are useless. He can deceive them for some time, but sooner or later, the truth will come out, and then they will kill him. In any case, if that's all, the servant must make sure that the Baroness is not caused any trouble. And it also seems that at the moment, besides the prince, he is at a reception with Countess Gisela. Lys was surprised when he learned that Laurel was there, and he became very curious about what he had planned. He ordered the servants to make sure that Melissa's was all right. The servant remarked that the master seemed troubled by something. Well, he was rejected. Besides, he doesn't want to make the crown principal look bad. He's a good person, despite his actions. He also always liked professionals in their field. Julie informed the lady that she had returned. Melissa was very grateful to the girl for her help. The preparations were complete, and the man remarked that it might seem that there was nothing special about this stone. The lady asked if he knew what opal was made of. Perhaps he did. Although it is precious, it is first and foremost a simple stone. Melissa told him that the main component of opal is silicon dioxide, also known as silica. Silica is not a gemstone and is primarily used as a desiccant. There's also another important component that makes up opal. There was a lot of fuss around. Melissa will restore this component and thus return the lost shine. The man said that for now, these were just words. He was very surprised. He began to believe she was a sorceress, but she was an ordinary appraiser with no connection to magic. Well, she's ready to begin. The prince and his bride watched closely. This is regular well water. First, you need to pour the water into a suitable container. Then, add a drop of the secret ingredient, and then wrap the opal in cloth. The lady reported that everything was ready, and the prince was surprised that it happened so quickly. Melissa told him that now all that remained was to wait a little while. 1 hour is enough, and she hopes he doesn't mind waiting a little. In the meantime, as proof that she is not deceiving by using magic and replacing stones, they can present an observer. The prince was shocked that she was so confident in herself, but the feeling that there was a catch somewhere did not leave him. Is it possible that she is here as a confidant of the Duke of Winterfeld? Countess Gisela's influence is not that great, however. She is still quite influential and has enough lands. If the Countess supports the Duke of Winterfeld, but first of all, it's worth taking a closer look at this person. The princess watched this process with inspiration. The prince turned to her and noted that at this moment, when she was useful. Besides, it is beneath the prince's status to make comments to a noblewoman from an impoverished family. But if the matter concerns the suppression of violations of the foundations of secular society, moreover, on behalf of the prince's bride, Unfamiliar with customs and traditions, what is happening will seem self-evident. The lady requested the attention of the ladies and gentlemen and requested that the true nature of the Gizella County heirloom be presented. Right before them now is a Gizella family heirloom, an 800-carat black opal. This is the same stone as before. They are similar in size and shape, but many do not understand how this is even possible. Moreover, this woman is suspicious. So many began to think that this was a deception and that the stone had been replaced. The prince ordered everyone to be quiet and remarked that it was truly amazing because the opal, which had lost its shine, now looked like the greatest treasure. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, you wouldn't have believed it. But she really didn't replace anything. Everyone was watching so closely, or the appraiser wouldn't have been able to replace such a large stone. Well, he's very curious about this suspicious bottle. If this woman isn't a wizard, then that means the contents of this bottle are a chemical for processing. It was truly an amazing sight, and the gentleman asked if she was saying that she was Melissa Sassatanya. The lady confirmed everything. 2 hours ago, she promised to restore the shine by restoring an important component of the stone. That's why the gentleman wants her to explain what exactly was restored. He gave this order so calmly. This is a good opportunity for him if there is a special composition that makes him lose shine or restores it. Then, with the support of the royal family, he will not be able to manipulate him and harm Winterfeld. The prince waited for her to confess what kind of element these branches were. Or maybe it's a special mineral. The appraiser said it was water. Everyone was shocked when she said it was water, but Princess Blanche was the most surprised. Opal contains water. A synonym for this stone is populescence, meaning its shine is illusory. This is what allows opal to sparkle with its many colors. The water contained in the stone creates a beautiful shimmer. Any opal will lose its shine if stored in a dry place for a long time. Of course, water alone won't help, but this opal is a family heirloom of the Gizella family. It was discovered when the first Count Gizella was given a share of land to build a mansion, and the Countess confirmed it. It was mined during the planning of land for the construction of a mansion, although there are no mineral veins nearby. So, this jewel is a piece of history that goes hand in hand with the Count's family, and its value lies not in its size or beauty. Thanks to this inscription, she understood how to restore the shine. This is only possible here because the water from the well near the mansion is the original component of the stone. And this water is ideal for opal in terms of hardness and salt content. People began to find this a touching story. Showing such a relic to the public signified the Countess's wholehearted faith in the Gizella family's abilities. Melissa turned to the Count and asked if he remembered their deal. He even flinched. The audience was in anticipation because the Count had to apologize. The Crown Prince noted that everything was correct and the Count should apologize to his wife because a deal is a deal. He also turned to the appraiser and said that this also concerned her. It seems the situation has become clear. So, on behalf of his bride, he will punish her. Blanche immediately rushed to His Highness and asked how this could be, and he said that in their society, there was a generally accepted rule. When problems of this nature arise, the right to make a decision rests with the woman with the highest status. Despite Princess Blanche being present at the event, she recklessly insisted on the deal. Melissa said that if she found the missing relic, he would apologize to his wife. So presumptuous. Therefore, she will be punished. Suddenly, a servant burst into the room. He informed the lady that a carriage had arrived from the Duke of Winterfeld. The Crown Prince was surprised because he thought that the Duke had refused the offer, and the servant confirmed this. In honor of Gizella's family's restoration, the Duke sent a gift. Before them stood Ryan Krimhatz, a knight and adjutant to the Duke of Winterfeld. This man's nickname, known to the public, inquired how His Highness was doing because his cousin ordered him to accompany and protect a very important person. This man is the Duke of Winterfeld's right-hand man. The Crown Prince was very angry, and so he decided to ask the girl what her relationship was with the Duke. Melissa didn't understand what he was talking about because she had no connection to the Duke. The knight gestured for her to be quieter, and at that moment she realized that this was a great opportunity to get out of this situation. But she had previously rejected Louis. Even if she is punished, she does not intend to take advantage of the Duke's influence. So she said that she is simply sharing with him. And then, in return, she receives business advice and there is nothing between them. The misunderstanding that occurred here is that Crown Prince Laureld is completely mired in greed and misunderstandings. Suddenly, the prince began to laugh very loudly and asked if this excuse was so ridiculous and could not believe that only he thought so. They've known each other since childhood, and he knows everything about Louis. This cold-blooded man sent his protege, and all this for the sake of a woman he doesn't care about, and therefore, he can't believe it. This appraiser continues to irritate him, but it seems she is Louis's mistress. If that's the case, then he won't be able to use the princess as a cover. Laureld Annabelle is the crown prince, but he is currently opposing his cousin. The previous Duke of Winterfeld has abdicated the throne, but his son is still the second heir to Annabelle's kingdom. And the current king deliberately supports Louis and compares his son to him. It's common that if his son kills his brother and ascends to the throne, then perhaps he will recognize him. Because of this turn of events, he will not be able to enjoy what he deserves. He has to be constantly afraid of the Duke and quarrel with his stupid bride. However, he discovered something. If the Duke was keeping an eye on her, then his assumptions were correct. It's obvious this woman is hiding a big secret. Whatever it is, he's going to take it for himself. Absolutely! The prince informed Acerin that he had lost interest, and so she should return. And he will stay until the end of the evening to show his sincere intentions towards Countess Gisela. Over time, the Duke's knight asked the lady to go with him, because he wanted to take her home, since the Duke had ordered him to accompany her. The secretary was shocked at how Sir Crimhotz became a knight thanks to the Duke. The gentleman said that calling him that was too burdensome, so she could just call him Ryan, since he wasn't that important. He was an ordinary street orphan, but his lordship took him in and raised him up. The Duke, one might say, saved him, and also, thanks to the Duke, he met such a beautiful Miss Julie. Her secretary began to feel embarrassed, and the lady thought that this knight should become an actor. Afterwards, he turned to the lady and asked if he could ask her one question about this mixture. He was curious about what it consisted of. At first, the gentleman thought it was perfume, but it was ordinary oil, and she used it to polish jewelry. It really is oil. How she restored the stone's shine was explained at the banquet, and she thinks he heard about it. Well, in the case of Gisela's opal, she needed to further treat the gem to prevent the moisture from evaporating again. Melissa told the knight that she also had a question for him. She thinks so much and still cannot understand why the Duke sent him to help her. Naturally, she is grateful, but the situation is really not easy, and the whole point is that he was rejected by her. So the lady doesn't understand whether he still needs her. The knight said no, that's unlikely. Firstly, he doesn't just need her, he needs her, like air. So he keeps her in his field of vision. Perhaps that is why he was ordered to protect the Baroness. However, the knight can say for sure, I will remember that the Duke gave such orders before. So he thinks his lordship fell in love with Baroness Tanya at first sight, or something like that. These words confused the lady. She didn't understand at all what he was talking about, because it was some kind of nonsense and definitely not true. Louis Winterfeld is a man whose face appears in the newspapers every day. He's surrounded by a handsome man, like stars in the sky. So she can't imagine such a man falling in love with a 32-year-old virgin from the lower nobility. When they arrived, the knight courted the miss and her secretary. He wished Baroness Tanya and Miss Julie a safe return. It's just his guess, but he has a feeling that they will meet again. Melissa tried to convince herself that he needed her as an expert, so there was no need to pay attention to strange words. The ordered pearls will arrive tomorrow. She still needs to unpack the rest of the materials. It was time to get to work, for the good of her shop. The lady asked again what she meant, because Melissa didn't want to believe anyone that the pearls ordered in her name never arrived. The thing is, they themselves didn't expect this. This year, the southern continent has been experiencing frequent storms, which has led to a rise in the price of saltwater pearls. Taking advantage of this situation, a certain high-ranking nobleman bought up all the supplies of the mineral, and he himself has not seen a single tear from the sea in recent times. Saltwater pearls are harvested in the warm south, unlike their cheaper counterparts that grow in fresh water. It is more difficult to find pearls in salty environments, so their price is high. In addition, due to the nature of the South Sea, famous for its storms, merchant ships often suffer wrecks. Melissa realized that there was nothing she could do about it. When she was in business, she was likely to encounter incidents like this. This could easily have been guessed, Next time, she asked to make it her priority to notify customers that the product was out of stock. The secretary said, "I asked the lady what they should do." Melissa asked her to calm down. This is truly an unpleasant situation, but there's no need to make a fuss. However, there are orders for pearl jewelry. For the most urgent ones, they use the minerals they have left and simply make use of everything they have. White pearls are valuable in themselves, but multicolored stones surpass them in value, and especially black, without any other color cast. The delightful green peak is like the shine of a peacock's tail feathers. She kept this pearl for a long time, but perhaps now she should use it for an order. It's perfect for a brooch and a good size. It would look great in a pavé ruby frame. The secretary didn't burst in screaming and saying that it was very urgent. She asked the lady to follow her. Otherwise, she did not understand at all what was going on. The man didn't even understand when she would arrive. When she did, he was delighted to see his mistress. He regrets it, but he decided to make a deal with another jeweler, and he regrets it. The second man does too. As she knows, they are on different sides of the same production. In order to increase the price of garnet, it was decided to reduce the volume of production. As for sapphires, on the contrary, the vein has begun to run dry and fewer stones are being mined. However, these circumstances make it difficult to fulfill the terms of the deal. They are somewhat similar to her. Their work involves walking on the edge of a knife. In any case, they were very sorry. Melissa tried to stop them. She didn't quite understand what was going on and told them to wait. The gentleman was surprised when he saw her go out into the corridor and said that he needed to tell her something. He handed her a letter which stated that his owner wanted to terminate the contract and receive an advance payment. Melissa decided to inquire who his master was. It was His Grace, Baron Modeno. He ordered earrings and a bracelet as a gift for his wife, but he declined. His wife asked if she could find out why. His servant cannot say anything. He is only a messenger working in the master's house. Melissa approached Julie and asked her to get the deposit from the safe because they were terminating the contract. Baron Modeno owns several large trading islands, and in terms of wealth and status, not everyone can put pressure on him. If there is a person in front of whom he will tactfully smile, then it seems to her that she can guess who it is. Suddenly, she noticed a man in a very strange outfit, and he was coming this way. Perhaps he was a client. It was a girl. And when she took off her mask, she asked if she could talk to the lady alone. "This is Princess Blanche." She thought there would be a lot of people here, so she disguised herself, the secretary asked the lady, and Melissa told her to watch the store while she was gone. Julie said the mistress could rely on her. She had no idea what was wrong with the princess's clothes. Blanche asked if she thought her disguise was too strange. The lady simply didn't understand why she needed to hide. The lady assumed the princess had fled the estate. Melissa thinks that in such attire, she will definitely be caught quickly. So she said they should change before going out. The princess remarked that, if she wasn't mistaken, the clothes she'd given her looked very much like men's. The lady confirmed that this was so, and asked if everything was well with the princess, and if she was comfortable. Nothing restricts movement, even though it's a formal outfit. It's very comfortable, and there's no pain in my legs. The princess meant that flat shoes don't hurt. The princess asked if they really would walk like that. The disguise is necessary to conceal her identity. Therefore, she doesn't have to worry about her clothes. Now everything is fine, and she has even settled in quite well. But when she started her business, people were prejudiced against her because of her appearance. She was kicked out from everywhere because everyone knows that women don't work on merchant ships. But this woman apparently doesn't know about it. That's why she prepared men's clothes for her. Well, after that, she asked the princess where she would like to go with her. On the way, a boy bumped into the princess, but he immediately called her brother and asked for forgiveness. The lady was surprised, and Melissa asked her how she was feeling. Everything was fine. They were children after all, so there was nothing to worry about. It was simply her first time out on a walk without an escort. Melissa decided to find out what had happened and how she had gotten out of the estate. The princess simply climbed over the fence. Everything seemed to be all right, but she decided she needed to warn her mistress about something. Melissa didn't understand at all what was going on. The princess said that although it was none of her business, it was about Baroness Tanya's store. This shop is where they sell opals treated with magic. The man who was leaving was grateful for the cooperation and asked that I be sure to inform my superiors. The Baroness realized that these were the same merchants who had refused to cooperate with her. The princess told her that this store belonged to Crown Prince Laureled. This establishment is one of the branches of the Prince Trading Company. Her fiancé decided to expand his influence through the jewelry business. Melissa, I was confident in my guesses until now. He is deliberately trying to interfere with the work of her shop. It must have been because of the incident with Count Gisela, and the princess climbed over the wall to tell her about it. Well, this man is her fiancé, so she doesn't quite understand why the princess is telling her about this. Blanche turned to the lady and said that I was interested in how well she knew the members of the Annabelle Kingdom family. For example, the princess is interested in whether the Baroness knows anything about the relationship between the Duke of Winterfeld and the Crown Prince, the king's illegitimate son and his nephew. This most likely concerns the succession to the throne. In Annabelle, where monarchs have absolute power, this is not the best topic of conversation, even with a fallen nobleman. The king is a heartless man, but he never gives up on his only son. This boy is indeed His Grace the Duke of Winterfeld. They say that the ruler loves his nephew more than the crown prince. Rumor has it that when the child was brought to the palace, the king believed in treating him like a prince. It's unclear whether they seriously believe this gossip. The Herzen family is growing stronger by the day, and to avoid any unwanted glances, it was decided to send the heir to the palace. Under the pretext of education and protection, the Winterfeld's successor will remain with the royal family. In any case, His Majesty killed 2 birds with 1 stone. From the very beginning, the king paid no attention to the crown prince. He took control of his duke and is testing the heir. While all this gossip was being discussed by the maids, His Highness the Crown Prince appeared behind them. The maids immediately fell on their knees and began to beg for forgiveness, but the heir ordered them to be hanged. As the lady could already guess, the relationship between the Duke and the Prince can hardly be called good. They were raised to encourage hostility between children, however. It is absurd to compare a nephew and a natural son. Therefore, the fact of the throne of succession in the kingdom of Annabelle remains unchanged. However, the prince cannot stand the Duke because he had something that the prince never had. Let me figure out why he started developing in the jewelry field in order to undermine the Winterfeld's business. He also disliked the Baroness, but she had nothing in common with the Duke. When she was in danger, it was the Duke who sent her the knights to resolve the situation. Krimhatz is the Duke's right hand, and the Crown Prince also believes she has exceptional skills in alchemy or magic, which can help with their jewelry business. Melissa didn't understand at all why this was happening, or how this misunderstanding had even happened. The princess asked her if she meant to say it wasn't true. Well, when she restored the luster of the Gisela family heirloom, it felt like she'd used a magic elixir. Melissa apologized for the misunderstanding, but the substance was not a magical elixir as it might seem. The bottle contained an oil preservative, and the lady has no intention of cooperating with the duchy using her skills or shops. My request may seem rude, but she asks to explain to the prince that he is mistaken in his judgments. She's his cousin and his fiancé, so she can do it. If that were really the case, she could, but their relationship is nothing more than an illusion. The Crown Prince never listens to her. Almost half a year has passed since the engagement was announced, and she thinks that you should fulfill her request. 2 women who had never met before met during the chaos at the Countess's ball, however, although she cannot do anything. But if she finds out that the princess warned her about everything, it seems to her that Blanche is in a difficult situation. The mistress noticed that the maids were looking for the princess. Blanche will likely be scolded when she returns, but she believes she did the right thing. And on that day she looked stunning, because the princess was enchanted by her mistress's steadfastness and grandeur. Therefore, the princess asked her mistress to take care of herself, and then the maids approached her and began asking where she had gone looking like that. The Duke of Winterfeld had no way of knowing about the conflict with the Crown Prince, but nevertheless sent a knight for her. He didn't know what was happening at the Countess's reception, and besides, all the actions of the heir to the throne were absurd and illogical. If she can figure it all out, if she can explain it, then everything will change. So the lady came to the prince and announced that she agreed to the wedding, but she had a number of conditions and demands. The Duke remarked that he was shocked with you, that she had changed her mind so suddenly. He asked her to sit down and asked her not to think that he was going to give up on this idea. But the gentleman asks her to reveal the reasons for such a radical change in the plan. During the day, she met with Princess Azarin Blanche, The Duke expressed surprise that she had seen her. News reached him that she had escaped from the mansion, which caused a huge commotion. Apparently, the girl did this to go to the Baroness, but he wonders why she did it. Melissa said it was all a warning. The princess wanted to warn her about the crown prince. Now Louis understood that his cousin was involved in this, and then asked her to continue without stopping. Melissa said Tanya is reluctant to trust men, especially those of noble birth. She has seen many things she hadn't noticed before. The 60-year-old count still hopes that he will have an heir. The company president was courting her, even though he had a wife. Even her husband was such a distinguished woman. So you wonder how this man is different from them. The lady decided to accept the Duke's offer. Sonia has been on a gamble her entire life. The crown prince is disrupting her trade and trying to destroy her store in every way possible. If she can clear this up, everything will change. When the lady arrived, the secretary was very frightened and called for the lady. The lady asked what had happened and why there was such a mess. The secretary didn't even know what to answer. While she was cleaning the store, someone threw trash in front of the doors. And that's all she knows. And while she was gone, some of the aristocrats with whom they collaborated refused to engage in joint trade. But that's not all. The workshop demands payment of wages for future work in advance. The lady didn't even know how to justify it. If she explains everything to the princes in great detail and says that it is a complete misunderstanding, then it is unlikely that he will believe her words. If His Highness were to drop his claims, she was unsure whether she would be able to repair the damage to the stores. Melissa decided that this would not do. Even if he was the crown prince, she would not allow this man to ruin her store. The lady asked Julie to call the maid to clean up the trash, and she should go home. But the secretary decided to ask what the mistress would do. Melissa said she needed to visit the Duke of Winterfeld. The lady has only 3 conditions. First, she will be completely on his side, so that she can then return safely to her shop. Secondly, they will sign the contract with a seal to prevent unexpected new conditions from appearing later. Thirdly, when she has fulfilled her duties, which directly depend on the interest in the dukedom, the contract must be terminated, regardless of the expiration of the 2-year limitation period. If these 3 conditions are met, then she will accept his proposal. Her fate is at stake, but he needs her more than he needs her to go. They must lay all their cards on the table. Melissa couldn't wait for his answer any longer, and suddenly, Louis said it was wonderful, and he agreed. Then he called the butler and asked him to draw up the contract. After that, the lady sighed, and he suggested discussing some details that needed to be included in the contract. Regarding the details, the gentleman decided to ask if the lady had any favorite flowers. Melissa was very surprised and said maybe roses, since she wasn't much of a gardener. The Duke started asking her about her favorite food and color. The color is blue. The lady is unsure whether she really has to answer these questions as part of the agreement. It was certainly true that, even if their marriage was actually effective, they had to make people believe in their passionate love. The Duke asked her if she thought that if an admirer did not even know the basic preferences of his lady, then this would arouse suspicion. They also need to decide on how to address each other when they play a couple in love. He won't be able to constantly call her Baroness Tanya. He asked her what to choose, sweetheart, darling, or something else. He suggested calling her Nuna. It's a term a guy uses for an older girl or an older sister. He was 25 at the time. The lady blushed deeply and began to say that the name would be enough. And after this, the Duke laughed, and the lady did not understand at all what made him laugh so much. She probably interpreted his behavior. So be it. In the future, he will call her by her name. Louis would call her Melissa. So the gentleman decided to ask her how she felt about being called that. Suddenly, the princess's father burst in and called her crazy and asked what she was doing. He shouted that he was shocked with you, that she ran away from her will to go for a walk. Not only do they have a lot of rumors about the unsociable princess, now there's this too. Father asked Asarin to watch her behavior and remember well that they were still alive only thanks to the mercy of the royal family. In any case, she must not do anything that might anger the crown prince. Azarin decided to listen to her father and promised not to do it again. Melissa put up a sign saying the store was closed, and the secretary had no idea what was going on. The lady will have to close the store, but this is a temporary measure. It will last for a maximum of 2 years. Julia believed it was because of the crown prince and thought he had gone too far. They even had to stop work. She is also interested in what the Duke said. Since the lady visited the Winterfeld mansion, the secretary thought he could help, but something must have happened during the meeting. Melissa shook it and said that the negotiations went well, and also decided to ask what she was going to do in the future. As soon as the store closed, she would have to look for a new job, so she decided to ask the lady if she had her eye on anything. But wasn't it so that she noticed that she should start searching from today? It's great that they're located in the capital. Finding work here won't be difficult. Madam, don't worry. As soon as the store opens again, she'll be back here soon, because there is no more devoted worker than her, and the lady herself knows this very well. The lady offered her a seat, and also said that if she still hadn't found somewhere to go, she would offer her to become an assistant, but her duties would be different from those of a jewelry salesperson. Julie immediately said she was open to the idea, but she decided to inquire about the job. She and the Duke decided to get married. She is not allowed to disclose the details of the contract, but she will adhere to the strategy described in it. She herself knows how hostile the aristocrats are to the store, but nevertheless, they have to work with them. And in this matter, a reliable ally is needed. In other words, the store owner becomes a duchess. Julia was shocked that you would make her the Duchess's maid of honor. The lady was shocked by her behavior. She said she could rely on her then. And so her dream store closed, albeit temporarily. Later, she and the Duke of Winterfeld clearly defined all the terms of the agreement. The lady was shocked that she needed so many dresses. The tailor asked the Baroness to refrain from unnecessary conversation during the fitting. The Duke remarked that Madame Tricia could be a bit stern, and he's confident she can handle this ordeal. She just needs a little patience. The woman was shocked that he called her stern, so she said she wasn't at all, because order is the foundation. So, everything was ready, and the new Duchess stood before the Duke. Melissa was very unusual in this image. The Duke was very surprised and froze. Melissa didn't understand why he was so surprised. She'd already thought she looked so strange that even he was surprised. Louis said she shouldn't think anything bad. He just didn't expect that. The lady told Laurel not to be so cold and to smile, since she was going to buy something anyway. She stopped and realized that someone had come to see them. But this woman was the famous spinster. The prince greeted the Duke of Winterfeld. He seemed to have his hands full, but they had been crossing paths frequently lately. And here he sees that woman again. Louis remarked that he had noticed it too and was shocked, as you were, that he was accompanying Viscountess Raji. The Vicness confirmed this and noted that His Highness was very generous. The prince noticed that she had not deigned to arrange a time in advance, and nevertheless brought him to Madame Tricia's salon. Princess Azurin herself says that she is only playing her role as a bride, throwing dust in the eyes of those around her. But even if that's the case, you, already the heir to the throne, leave your fiancé alone and openly spend time with your mistress. Vicomtessa asked His Highness now how he liked this hat, and asked him if it would suit her. The victor was shocked to see the lady and approached her. Afterwards, she said that she had heard a lot about her and was glad to meet her. Baroness Tani is a gemologist, so she believed that the woman had decided to work for the Duke. It's as if she cooperates with a high-ranking nobleman, she has every chance of attracting attention. Melissa, what does this woman allow herself? She confirmed that clothing is very important, but such dresses are only worn to receptions if you have a partner. They met for the first time, and she already allows herself to sling mud at the mistress in a veiled manner. The Duke remarked that he did not think Viscountess Raji should be so persistently concerned about those around her. The Duke promised to be Melissa's partner at the next banquet, and he doesn't even know if it's a good thing they met so unexpectedly. He was going to tell them about this a little later, but since it happened this way, he asks permission to introduce his bride to them. The Wall Prince was shocked when he heard about this, and noted that he didn't even know about it. The Duke simply tried to be very careful so that their relationship would not be discovered prematurely. What was surprising was that the gentleman had noticed their close relationship earlier. He believed that the Crown Prince had closed her fiancé's shop so that they could prepare for the wedding ceremony in peace. The Duke was shocked that he was marrying before his brother, Lorelei. Well, he shouldn't have to think too much. He is also at that age when it is time to find a partner and start a family. But unlike the prince, his marriage is for love. The gentleman picked Melissa up in his arms and said with a smile that it was time for them to go. Melissa begged the master to put her down that very second. Holden immediately granted her wish. The lady said that even if they don't get along, she doesn't even know what the consequences of ridiculing a member of the royal family might be. The Duke noted that they had not planned the marriage, so he did not understand at all why the lady was so angry. He's also part of the royal family, after all. And then he said he was just joking, but he still thinks that it's really good that they met like this. After this, when the cousin saw everything with his own eyes, he will not doubt their relationship. However, due to the fact that he was facing a direct opponent, he could not openly say that this dress suited her very well. The lady could not believe that he was saying this seriously and was very embarrassed. He never told her what such clothing was for, but the gentleman wanted it to remain a secret for now. In the duchy, everyone welcomed her, and from now on promised to take care of her safety. The lady didn't rise at all. What kind of introduction was this? The Duke said she would become mistress of the Winterfield estate, so he couldn't see why he wouldn't introduce her to those who lived here. When she takes off her glasses, she becomes incredibly attractive. The mistress has such neat hands, they are so soft and gentle. The servants are very happy to be able to serve her. After my mother's death, there was no mistress in this house. She will probably be no less busy in the future than when managing the store, and perhaps her workload will even increase. The gentleman also wanted to ask whether she had carefully read all the points of the contract. Sooner or later, they'll have to come out as partners. Melissa first asks when that will happen. At a banquet in honor of the opening of a jewelry auction organized by the Winterfeld family. When aristocrats involved in trade with the ducal house are invited, it is an excellent chance to showcase their relationship. But one thing will definitely pique her interest. A very famous stone will be up for auction. I don't know if she ever heard about a blue diamond, a harbinger of trouble. If she understood him correctly, and he is talking about a blue diamond that brings bad luck, everything is absolutely correct. He meant exactly that stone, behind which stretches a 400-year history, soaked in blood and passions. The mineral remained in its original form for quite a long time and was not processed. The diamond passed from one owner to another, but wherever it appeared, trouble always came. And this jewel will be put up for auction at the auction mentioned by the Duke. Now, many people are interested in this event. The lady was shocked with you that she would be able to see this legend with her own eyes. That was true. But they could talk about work later. First of all, they should show the servants their wonderful relationship. The lady was embarrassed by the fact that she needed to show a wonderful relationship because she did not understand how to do it. The Duke kissed his wife, and she blushed deeply. She probably needed to kiss him back, so Melissa reached out to kiss him, and then immediately turned away from him. The woman noted that it seemed the butler had been waiting for him for some time, and she hoped that she had not distracted the Duke from important matters. The lady said she would ask the maid to take her out. Meanwhile, the gentleman froze. The maid said the mistress could follow her. Melissa touched his cheek with her lips, even in front of other people. She didn't even know if she should get used to this. And in any case, it was nothing more than a game. There was no point in worrying about trifles. The head maid ordered to show the future mistress everything here. Rachel Robin, head maid of Winterfeld House. The woman greeted her mistress. She is Hertz's confidant and is responsible for the residence's household. This woman gives the impression of being a very strict person. Rachel was told that the lady wished to inspect the mansion, so she asked her to follow her. This woman seems a little old-fashioned, but she is more straightforward and neat than other nobles. She'd only been here a couple of times. On those occasions, she'd never had a chance to look around because she'd had to get back to the store as quickly as possible. And after I signed the contract, a lot of things piled up, so there was no time for a tour. The Winterfeld family residence is a truly grand place. The kingdom is home to Annabelle, a ducal family whose history is closely intertwined with the founding of the state. It occupies a special position among aristocratic families, and its authority is comparable to that of the royal dynasty. To be more precise, the dukes have been blood relatives of the king since time immemorial. The Duke of Winterfeld, that is, Louis, also often mentions that he is part of the ruling family. This woman is most likely the Duke's mother. The head maid reported that the portrait depicted the late mistress. Melissa had seen this painting before, or rather, she was familiar with the gemstone. After the Winterfeld family developed the diamond cutting method, This was the first crystal to be cut by human hands. The head maid confirmed that it was the Duchess who came up with this polishing method. The lady was also the only daughter of the Duke of Winterfeld. His lordship, the late Duke, who later became her husband, ceded his title to His Highness the Fifth Prince. His status as the Duchess's husband was enough for him. Well, all Rachel could say with certainty was that the Duke was the most handsome and virtuous man in the social circles of Annabel's kingdom. And if that accident hadn't happened, his lordship's situation would likely be completely different now. Melissa asked again about the accident. Turetsky noted that his master looked happy. Louis said that he was truly very happy now. He couldn't even remember how long it had been since he felt such a surge of joy. Even though Laurel's tricks are becoming more and more obvious day by day, there is still nothing strange about it. Very soon, all the problems would disappear. The butler believed that this was thanks to the woman the gentleman had brought. He doesn't know about the others, but hearing something like this from the butler is a little strange, because he knows perfectly well that this is a contractual relationship. Old men like him often get confused in their words, so with the master's permission, he will leave him alone with his work. Louis believed that he was not mistaken. He was sure that only a contract connected them. Well, the gentleman began to blush when he remembered how the lady kissed him, and he did not understand at all what kind of reaction this was. The maid was shocked with you that the mistress had not heard anything about that accident. It's a sad story, so it's logical that no one would want to go back to it again and again. At that time, the young gentleman was only 11 years old. The lady became ill. The boy watched all of this. The person who put the poison in the tea took a bite out of his own tea, so the investigation reached a dead end, and the mastermind was never found. Melissa didn't even know what to say to her, but the maid actually brought her here specifically to tell her about it. She had heard that the young duke was averse to quarrels or fights. The maid said that the gentleman most likely hadn't intended to tell her this story. He probably thinks he can protect his family on his own. But the art of protecting others and the ability to avoid problems that stand in your way are completely different things. And in order to understand this, a person must appear whom the lady values very much. Although it had been quite some time since the gentleman had reached the age of marriage, he had not yet brought any lady as his chosen one. She hopes that Mr. Lewis will never again experience the grief he had to endure as a child, and everyone who has been helped by the Winterfeld family sincerely wishes the same. She apologized for the inconvenience. She also asked the lady to take care of the Duke. From the time of the family's fall until today, except for business negotiations, she has consciously tried to stay away from the aristocrats, their problems in everyday life. Although she had seen much about the partnerships of noble families, she had no desire to learn their innermost secrets or domestic affairs. But despite all this, she has her own little shop, and it is somewhat similar to the master's residence. Although they found themselves in the same boat due to strategic considerations, the mistress of the ducal family cannot run away from problems forever. The mistress asked the maid to raise her head. She knew from the start that she was taking a huge risk. Everything she had worked hard for 10 years was destroyed in an instant with the easy hand of the crown prince. Melissa said that she was definitely not the most gifted person, but nevertheless, she could cope. The girl decided that she would never be afraid or back down, and so she promised to do her part as long as she was the head of the family. She'll do everything possible to protect herself, which made the maid smile. She thinks the young gentleman has met a wonderful girl. He noted that it took quite a while, and then he asked the lady if she enjoyed walking around the mansion. When he looked at her, his face immediately changed, and he asked what was wrong. Melissa firmly asked him how many days were left until the reception, and asked him to hire teachers, because she was going to learn everything she could before the appointed day. Yes, neither Melissa nor Louis will ever lose again. The Duke noticed that she was determined, and that was wonderful, so he suggested she learn the waltz. But he wanted to do it right now, so he pulled the lady closer to him. Everyone was welcome to a banquet in honor of the auction taking place on the ship. Today, the rarest gemstones will be auctioned, and the House of Winterfeld is organizing this unforgettable event. Although it was said that the evening would take place on a ship, it is only an open event on a ship moored in the port. However, the atmosphere is quite lively. The Duke asked Melissa if she was already mentally prepared for this. The girl felt like she was about to die from excitement. The lady told her not to lose heart and asked Julie to calm down. As soon as her name is spoken outside, a line of high-ranking nobles forms, wanting to introduce themselves to her. There were many more people here than at the Countess's reception, but Julia asked the lady whether it really wasn't enough for her to become a duchess if she also made her maid of honor. The Duke said she was not taking part today in the role of a gemologist, so she should stand up straight and carry herself confidently. She also doesn't have to worry. Once their relationship is officially announced, no one will be able to speak disparagingly towards her and Miss Julia. Her secretary tried to tell her something, but the lady told her to be quiet because Louis was right. And for such an announcement to be as effective as possible, you need to gather as many people as possible. The Duke turned to Melissa and said that before moving on to the main event, he asked her to come with him to his office. The lady did not quite understand why they needed to go to his office. There awaits a man who can become their ally. Since the gentleman was talking about allies, the lady decided to agree, and they walked hand in hand into his office. The lady believed that this meant that he was aware of the contract. Their goal was to breach the ruling family's defenses and change the royal coat of arms. And he was shocked that she thought she could handle it all alone. If I'm strong, they'll need like-minded people who can help carry out the plan. The lady believed that he was talking about supporters, and that was exactly the case. But these were not random people. They have all been working for the Winterfeld family for quite a long time, so she can trust them. Comrades who will never betray Melissa. The lady decided to inquire how many people knew about their plan. Besides the Duke and his wife, there are 4 other people. The first, of course, is his butler, Grace Colton, who is the longtime butler of the Winterfeld family. The second woman is the chief maid, Rachel Robin, the manager of the Winterfeld family. The third is the knight's commander, whom she knows well, Ryan Grim Krimhotz, commander of the Winterfeld Knightly Order. And finally, the last person. When the door opened, a guy with red eyes stood behind it. The gentleman greeted the lady and remarked that he had heard of her and that his name was Jan. The lady was shocked by you because this boy is still a child, so she asked the Duke what it meant. Louis is well aware of what this looks like, but asks her not to let herself be deceived. Ian is a respectable adult. He's 36 years old. The lady was shocked when she heard his age. This boy, even older than she, a mage of the Winterfeld family, greeted the future mistress of the house. For some reason, he stopped growing. The lady was shocked and decided to ask him about it. The servant informed the lady that they could not let her in without an invitation. She can't do whatever she wants here. This auction house is the property of the Duke of Winterfeld. An unfamiliar woman in a cape began to scream and ask why he was standing in her way. The woman said the blue diamond put up for auction was her husband's legacy. Jan is a hereditary magician, and although there is not much strength left now, nevertheless, there are very few strong magicians, and sometimes such defects appear. Melissa was very surprised. Ian had to leave the house for business, but the auction might require magical abilities. So the gentleman asked him to be present. The lady thought it was a routine auction, so she didn't quite understand why a mage was needed. The Duke wanted to say something, but suddenly, someone knocked on the door. It was the servant who informed the master that Viscountess Dorian had arrived, so he asked if he could invite her. The lady was surprised when she heard about Isolde. The magician decided to ask the master what he intended to do. The Duke said that Melissa might be interested, so he suggested that she go with him. Jan said that he would tell her the rest later, so the lady could go in peace. The blue diamond is her husband's inheritance. However, even if it is, there's nothing the servants can do about it. After which, the Duke and his wife approached her and greeted the Viscountess. He asked if he could help her with anything. The Viscountess was shocked that the Duke had come to her in person. Her name is Isolde Dorian, and the upcoming auction includes her husband's inheritance, which is a blue diamond. Their family is currently in an unstable financial situation, but she will personally try to pay off the debt. If he, the Duke, cares about moral principles, then she asks him to return the stone to her. Melissa assumed there was some problem with the inheritance, but even if we don't take into account the financial difficulties, her clothes. The Duke would have been happy to help, but the jewel was put up for auction by the Viscount's younger brother. As far as he knows, she has no heirs, and if this treasure is Viscount's property, then whoever receives the title next has full right to dispose of the property. Even though Louis is the Duke of Winterfeld, he cannot act outside the law, and there is no point in discussing it here. So the gentleman asked the lady to go inside. The woman finally agreed. Melissa noticed a strange grin on her face. and then her husband came up to her and asked her to go with him. Julie would never have thought that she would meet that very same Madame Isolde in person. She is right. This woman was a very famous singer, but after marriage, she ended her career. Julie couldn't understand how such a beautiful girl could be locked up all the time and never show up at social events. It was not her decision. She did not have the opportunity to lead a social life. Everything turned out this way because Isolde was not a noblewoman, a simple townswoman, and a singer to boot. This woman married for convenience and wielded the entire kingdom at her side. Well, rumor has labeled her a sinner. The Duke doesn't understand all the situations and can't help, so she asks her to try to explain them to him. The gentleman is very curious about what's really going on. Therefore, he is awaiting answers from the Viscountess. The Duke can't help her without knowing the whole situation, so he has to find out everything. Isolde's husband, the Viscount, did not die as a result of an accident, as everyone thinks. In that case, it's clear he was murdered. The lady reported that he was killed by his younger brother, Sir Dorian, and all this was done to take the blue diamond away from her. Melissa wondered what this meant. The fact that the brothers were on bad terms was known to everyone in Soviet society. But even taking this into account, the Duke does not understand why she decided that her husband was killed by his younger brother. Isolde asked him to understand her, because she had seen something. He noted that she is now bringing charges of murder, without any evidence, against the heir of the family to which she belongs. He doesn't know what exactly she saw, but it's important whether she has irrefutable evidence and whether she can take responsibility for her words. Isolde said that perhaps if she had kept silent from the beginning, but she would not have come here if she was going to regret her words. On the evening of the accident, she saw her husband's brother leaving his room with a bottle of medicine in his hands. Melissa was lost in thought, and so was the Duke. After all, they thought Vic had died from a fall from a horse. After all, they didn't remember the poison story. True, he fell off his horse and broke his neck, but her husband is a man who used to compete in horse riding. Therefore, he couldn't have fallen from his horse without cause. However, a doctor had to examine the body. The woman assured the gentleman that the doctor was invited by her husband's brother, and she was afraid that money would decide everything from then on. Isolde is his wife, but because of the background of the whole family, she is of no importance to them, and her opinion means nothing to them. She couldn't even hint at a second investigation. Yet the Duke understood her. The event had already begun, and it looked like a decision needed to be made as soon as possible, but he just wanted her to give him a little more time to think. The Duke said he would arrange for her to be placed in the guest room, and she could rest a little, and if she wanted, she could go down to the hall for the party. But first, Melissa would like to ask the lady something. The Contessa apologized and turned to the Duke, asking who this woman was. Louis apologized for not introducing Melissa's to Tanya right away. At first, the woman thought for a moment, but then immediately realized that this was the owner of the jewelry store. So she decided to ask again if this woman was a gemologist at Crescendo Jewelry. The lady was shocked that this woman knew about her. The Viscountess remarked that she couldn't help but know. Rumors had already spread that she was the best in her field. However, the woman was confident in the house that Tani was running her store without any support from the aristocratic family, so she didn't quite understand why this woman had come to the auction. It didn't look like she was there as a guest. This was of course true, because she was not a guest, but the hostess. Isolde was surprised and asked again, because she could not believe that she had accepted the Duke's patronage and entered into an exclusive contract with him. But that was not the case. And today, she is not here as an appraiser of the jewel. The Duke and Baroness Tanya decided to get engaged. Isolde was very surprised and didn't even know what to say. Afterwards, she smiled and said that she congratulated her, and then decided to ask what the lady wanted to know from her. The lady decided to ask the woman what the motive for the murder had to do with the jewelry, because she said that Lord Dorian, her husband's younger brother, killed him to take away that blue diamond. Isolde said that there is a man who wants to get the blue diamond. Instead of giving the diamond to that man, Lord Dorian intended to conduct his business on favorable terms. So he demanded the jewels, but was refused, and because of this, they began to argue with each other loudly. So she thinks he felt hurt and wanted revenge. Melissa thought about it and realized that this was his motive. So she told the lady that she understood, and then she thanked her for sharing. Then Isolde decided to take her leave and distance herself. Louis asked if there was anything worth noting. For now, the lady can't say anything. Jewelry with such a history is more valuable, There are now too many wealthy collectors who collect jewelry of not only rare origin, they have a special growth, so it is not surprising that they are required even from such influential people. There is meaning in Isolde's words. But what is this? Because the lady feels doubts. After this, they decided to go out to the guests, and everyone greeted His Excellency very joyfully. He looks very good today. So everyone pounced on him with questions about how he is doing. They decided to welcome the guests as hosts of the banquet. One of the guests provided wine from their vineyards in honor of His Excellency's appearance. The man asked if the Duke knew how much his sons respected His Excellency. Melissa, meanwhile, surveyed the grounds. She realized everyone was looking at her suspiciously. The Winterfeld family jewel auction was an official event, held at this time every year. Among the aristocratic families involved in trade, this is the largest charity auction. All aristocrats are divided into levels, depending on their origin and wealth. Receiving an invitation to an event organized by the Winterfeld family is evidence that a person has entered the social circles of this family. In addition, the family's auction, which also owns the largest gemstone in Annabelle, also serves as a fashion reference for all social circles and provides an opportunity to establish connections with others. Therefore, this is one of the most important events for Winterfeld. On such a day, joining the Duke as a partner is a significant event. Everyone was looking at Melissa, but she couldn't get close. Suddenly, the woman turned to the Duke and asked something about the woman standing behind him. The Duke revealed that this was the daughter of the Tanya family, Lady Melissasa Tanya. Today, she was keeping him company. The man remarked that he seemed to have heard her name before. The lady herself said that they were right, and that she was the appraiser of Crescendo's jewelry. He knew it. Even though it was a small shop, they were known for the good quality of their products. The master thought that she was not connected with other aristocratic families, but it seems that she got to the Winterfeld family with her own hands. They believed that the gentleman had invited her here to introduce them to a good buyer. A friend of mine imports corals, but the Duke interrupted them and said that if she left the banquet, many would likely be puzzled, because this is the first time he's had a girl of common descent accompany him. Even if she's already bored, she should endure it a little longer. The more dramatic the performance, the more effective it is, because if one wants to be dramatic, it is important to choose the right timing. As Melissa thought, most people are sure that she is pursuing some kind of business goal by coming here as Louis's partner. In order to turn the game in their favor, they needed to mislead people. So now everything is going as it should. Suddenly, she noticed one man and began to watch him closely. It was good to see Lord Dorian in such a place, for he was so grief-stricken. No, he'll most likely become a Viscount soon. The lady realized who that man was. This man is the one Isolde spoke of, Lord Dorian, Viscount Dorian's younger brother. At today's auction, he's the exhibitor of a blue diamond, a man suspected of murdering his older brother. However, it seems to differ from Isolde's stories. The lady believed that this could not be the expression on the face of a man who had killed his own brother. As Melissa thought, she needed to talk to him in person, so she decided to approach him. The woman introduced herself and greeted the gentleman, and also asked if he was Lord Dorian. The man confirmed this and asked for forgiveness because he did not know who the lady was. Melissa also introduced herself and said that she was very interested in the blue diamond he was displaying. When the gentleman thought about it, the thought immediately came to his mind that this woman was from that jewelry store. Melissa confirmed this. Darian said that if she wanted to talk about the jewelry, it would be best to consult the Winterfeld family appraiser. He is simply an exhibitor and does not engage in evaluation or pricing. Even I know who she is. His attitude does not change. As she thought, he is not a typical aristocrat, familiar with the laws of high society. You wouldn't think of this man as the killer of his own brother. The lady didn't even know whether she should continue the conversation, so she said that a lot of people had gathered. Besides, she thinks that it is very important for me not to know the owner. She is interested in the origin of the jewelry. We put them up for auction because she's fascinated when she thinks about the story behind a piece of jewelry. Collectors who collect jewelry with a famous history. People like that are always interested in that. She was curious about the blue diamond, so she asked if they called it something else now. The lady remembered that this diamond is called Isolde's Radiance. Dorian wasn't sure, madam. It seemed he reacted to Isolde's name. He needs to sell it, because that way he can fulfill the role given to him by his older brother. The highest bidder would win the auction, and Dorian decided to go for it. Well, and then they want to see a magical performance of doves from invited magicians. Meanwhile, the lady approached the Duke, and he was surprised that she had already looked around everywhere. Melissa said that there was a man there, and with his help, she now knows something about the blue diamond. Just in case, she will ask to know for sure, so she asks me not to understand incorrectly, but just listen to her. Winterfeld auctions are rigged and prohibited. These are auctions where the buyer is predetermined. The Duke was shocked. This is prohibited at auctions of historical jewelry, but is permissible at small auctions organized by some families, all in order to legally bribe a certain person, however, at the auction, for which the authoritative Winterfeld family is responsible. And considered second only to the royal family, this cannot be allowed. The Duke said that, of course it is. And then he asked Melissa what she understood. The lady remarked that it seemed to her that it didn't make any sense at all. According to Isolde, Lord Dorian was planning to bribe some influential person with a blue diamond, but this contradicts the fact that the diamond is put up for auction at Winterfeld. The lady turned to the gentleman and said that he would put it up for auction, where dishonest transactions were prohibited. So, just sell the jewel and turn it into money. Because of this, the Winterfeld family is one that lives up to its name, and there can be no exceptions. Honestly, everyone invited here is also here because of that diamond. From the very beginning, there were rumors that that blue diamond contained magic. It's a well-known story. Isolde, due to her status as a singer, changed people's perceptions of a diamond that was considered a source of trouble. She made everyone look at him in a new way thanks to her unequal marriage. So that's exactly what she thinks. This diamond became known as Isolde's Radiance, all in honor of his singer wife, Mrs. Dorian. It's a bit of a convoluted story, but the unfortunate death of the Dorian Viscount has sparked the interest of collectors. However, the reason they want to get the diamond is a secret that causes tragedies. This doesn't look like magic, but rather a real curse, so the lady decided to ask what to do in such a case. There's less than an hour left before the auction. Since someone has to take a side, it's unlikely to end well. Just as Mrs. Dorian has her motives, so does Sir Dorian. So no matter which side they choose, someone will still get hurt. Therefore, the Duke said that the best way was to bring the two together, so that they could solve the problem themselves. If Isolde had said this a little earlier, the situation would not have been so difficult. It's all because of the creditors. The lady was surprised and asked again. The family's funding dried up when, without the Viscount, the family failed to achieve the desired success, and they got into deep debt. Once the Viscount died, the creditors couldn't bear it any longer. For a month, Dorian, as mistress of the house, dealt with them for some time, and at the same time, questions arose about her husband's death, the transfer of her title, and the inheritance. So it all came down to this. But Melissa didn't quite understand what he meant. It wasn't in the papers, so she might not know about it. Something bad happened. Several angry creditors broke into Dorian's estate and smashed everything. Mrs. Dorian was also about to get hurt, so she took out her gun. The lady asked if he was saying she fired the shot. That was exactly it, but there were no casualties. She had simply threatened them. Before her wedding, when she was still a singer, she suffered a lot because of obsessive fans. So, from what he heard, she always kept a gun close at hand, which had become a habit. Melissa was surprised that she was carrying a gun. Suddenly, Melissa decided to ask Louis where Isolde was. The Duke didn't understand why she was asking so abruptly. The lady said that we need to find her. When she passed by, the lady heard a strange noise. At that time, she did not recognize the unfamiliar sound, but now she realized that it was a weapon. This woman brought a weapon. The Duke asked if she was really sure about this. There is no evidence, and nothing else comes to the lady's mind. Isolde is now dressed in mourning clothes. Her skirt is not so wide. If you hide a weapon there, when you move, it will catch on the lock of your clothes and make a sound. Melissa initially thought it was odd. A woman so deeply grieving for her husband would choose shoes and clothes with such embellishments. And if the accessories are visible, then the sound of metal while walking does not seem so strange. Well, what she heard was not the sound of jewelry. She definitely brought a weapon. The Duke said that he did not understand why she needed a gun, since she knew where she was going. This is proof that she has lost her mind. This is not the easygoing world of Annabelle's musical art. Social circles are a more cutthroat place. It's a place where people don't care about maintaining their reputation simply because of their status. Of course, Isolde was able to become a high-ranking singer because of her abilities, but here she will not be able to reach the top thanks to talent alone. Prudence, ability to read people, courage. It was only after she became the wife of Vicomte Dorian that she was not drawn into serious problems for a long time, beyond the question of her origin. This is the reason why Isolde's emotional state was shaken, and she took up arms. And, listening to the gentleman, Melissa had an idea. The Duke eagerly waited for her to tell him. Isolde de Dorian, ignoring her title as a singer, as the wife of a viscount, truly fell deeply in love with her husband. The lady thinks that the blue diamond became the property of the Dorian family a generation ago. Louis confirmed this and said that the method of polishing jewelry was discovered not long ago. Everyone who has possessed this diamond has met a sad end, and as a result of constant changes of ownership over the past 4 to 5 years, it has ended up in the Viscountcy of Dorian. The person who last bought it was the wife of the previous Viscount, the mother of the deceased, and Isolde inherited this diamond. That is the reason. Melissa believes that this is a thing of a calm mother, given to her by her husband, whom she loved so much. Due to her background, her position in the family was unstable, and the diamond became a thing that proved her husband's feelings. Isolde wasn't the only one who thought this way. It looked the same to everyone else. That's where the name Isolde's Radiance came from. This is the reason why this blue diamond is as important to her as life itself. The problem is, Lord Dorian's words are completely incomprehensible to the lady, and she doesn't know what they mean. There is only one person Lord Dorian calls his elder brother. That is the late Viscount Dorian. Perhaps there was some kind of will he left him. From the very beginning, the jewel Viscount Dorian gave Isolde as a token of his love was a blue diamond. Now the family's financial situation is undermined, but Dorian is a family with a rich history. Besides the jewel that gets wet in blood, there are other valuables that can prove your recognition and love. Among the other things, they have more symbolic ones, so the lady does not quite understand why exactly him. The lady turned to Louise and asked if the magician's work was very expensive. At the moment, this is true. Only 2 families from Annabelle can afford his services. Those 2 families are, of course, the royal family and the family of the Duke of Winterfeld. The gentleman assumed that since she was asking, it meant she had some kind of guess. If she needs anything, she can always tell him. She can also use everything the Duke's family has at her disposal. Then the lady asked her husband to find out something within an hour. Louis decided to ask her what exactly she needed to know. Melissa wanted to know the family's financial situation and how much Isolde had invested in Dorian's family business. The gentleman turned to Ryan and asked if he had heard about everything. It was the Duchess's order, so he immediately knelt down and said that it would be carried out so she could rely on him. Every minute counts for the mistress. They need to find Isolde before something unforgettable happens. Therefore, the mistress asked Louis to come with her quickly. Suddenly, a girl addressed Lord Dorian and called him her brother-in-law. When he turned around, you realized it was his sister-in-law. So they met. The Lord asked for forgiveness, but he had nothing to say to her. If she has a complaint, she can tell them when they return home. The lady did not understand what they would talk about if the diamond ended up in the wrong hands at that moment. The Lord was shocked that this woman had pestered him again with this diamond. He's already on display at the circus. It's time to stop discussing it. So he asks her to stop. From the very beginning, he was against their wedding, because he knew that's how it would end. That's why I tried to dissuade him from the very beginning. But no one listened to him. Love has gone to her head, so she thinks it's time to look at everything soberly. Isolde screamed, asking what he was even talking about. After all, it was the Lord who had killed her husband. It was he who brought the vial into that room, and she saw everything. The Lord was in complete horror and asked her what she was even talking about, because it can't be that he killed his older brother. He screamed at her to just admit it, because it was her fault. If it weren't for her, his older brother wouldn't have died. The woman pulled out a pistol and pointed it at the Lord. She asked what he was even talking about, because her husband couldn't die because of her. Then Melissa ran up to her and started screaming at Isolde not to do it. She came here with a weapon. It is dangerous here, but it is very curious. The guests thought things were getting more and more interesting. They believed the man had supernatural powers. If you think about things related to Diamond, This is proof of its magical power. After her husband's death, she thought for a long time about the meaning of living on. She thought it would be better to just commit suicide. Isolde apologized for this mess. Today they both have a very wonderful event. Well, she can't forgive the man who killed her husband, and after taking his title, haphazardly disposed of the things that were left of him. Melissa shouted that this was not so, and Isolde did not understand what she was even talking about. Melissa says that Lord Dorian is definitely not to blame for the Viscount's death. The lady couldn't understand the source of such confidence. It was all because the blue diamond was up for auction at Winterfeld. Afterwards, the lady asked Isolde if she had thought about it. Before it was named Isolde's Radiance, it was known as a jewel that brought misfortune, and the mistress doesn't think it's a suitable gift for her beloved wife. Isolde said it belonged to her husband's mother. Before this dinner, the Viscount had already received many other outstanding jewels. Initially, this was a gift to show the symbolism of passing on a jewel from mother to daughter, but only one generation had passed since their family acquired this diamond. Isolde asked if she thought her husband had another reason for choosing this particular diamond as a gift. Melissa confirmed this and said that Lord Dorian had definitely put the diamond up for auction to fulfill his deceased brother's orders. Isolde was utterly horrified. The Duke said that if that were true, then concealing the deceased's will was also quite base. This misunderstanding hurt the widow, who was left without support, and he doubts the Viscount wanted it that way. When Bacon died, he said that if he died before the business flourished, his younger brother was to sell the blue diamond and return everything his wife had invested in it. He asked if he had conveyed the deceased Viscount's words correctly. The Lord had no idea how he had found out. Compared to other gems, this diamond can fetch a good price, even more than is usually received for such a diamond with its own history. When the Viscount's mother bought jewelry, she most likely did so for investment purposes. After this, Isolde lowered the gun and asked if this was the target and if they were saying that her husband died on his own. And then she decided to ask if they had any proof of this. The Duke provided what she asked for. This is an investigative report on the Dorian family's current financial situation. Even Winterfeld lent the family a small amount of money. Everyone knows that investors regularly receive information on how the money was used and, moreover, in their current situation, they can exercise their rights as a creditor. However, that wasn't the most important thing. The gentleman believed that Mrs. Dorian already knew the contents of this document. These are the matters she has been working on for the past few weeks. As the mistress of the family. If she needs proof, then the current financial state of the Viscount's family is proof. Viscount Dorian invested in the textile industry in the east of the kingdom. He began investing several years ago, almost immediately after their marriage. If the business had gone as planned, he would have made a huge profit, as it was a promising investment area. However, if a competitor hadn't suddenly appeared and the startup costs hadn't increased, he would have certainly succeeded. There was no immediate profit, but he had already invested the money and found himself tied hand and foot. He had already spent most of the money he could put into circulation, after which he not only spent Lady Isolde's personal property, but also took out a loan. He didn't understand that she didn't feel sorry for this money, but his soul was heavy. At that time, Madame Isolde became the subject of discussion due to her marriage to the Viscount, because she had already experienced difficulties and could not again become a good catch for high society. Their love was sweet, but reality often overshadows romance. The competitors, for whom their business had become a hindrance, thought the same. The Lord said that the elder brother had felt impending danger from that moment on. He thought that at some point he might be poisoned or killed, so that vial was an antidote. His younger brother brought him a bottle every day at his request. He was afraid that there might also be traitors among the workers. That's why he asked them to bring him medicine and not tell anyone. Isolde was in tears and said she didn't understand. She realized he needed to keep everything sexual, but she didn't understand why he hid it from her. If this was true, then her husband should have told her everything. The gentleman simply thinks that he did not want to make her worry, because Isolde had already suffered a lot. The brother asked to sell that diamond and return the money to his wife if he died one day, so that she, having lost her only protector, would not suffer from financial problems. He said that he must be sold. So, his younger brother put the stone up for auction. Isolde couldn't believe it. She said it simply couldn't be and fell to her knees. Everyone was shocked, along with you, that this blue diamond had a deep history. It all feels like part of a performance. like a dinner show before the auction. What is wealth? What is glory? And what is called power? Why do you, who possess it, so easily become disgusted by those who possess it? Even before all this, she suffered. Someone's tragedy so easily becomes gossip. When you deal with luxury items and are up against aristocrats, you often encounter this. But she is not going to put up with it today. The woman approached the man and remarked that his behavior was completely inappropriate, since he was saying this in the presence of the widow, who was still in mourning. The man asked who she was and how she dared to talk to him like that. I don't know who he is. Suddenly, he looked closer and realized that the face was familiar and that it was the Duke of Winterfeld's guest. The bald man was surprised and laughed that this could not be. After all, this is the same girl who runs a rat house-sized jewelry store in the city center. This man in the video is her awkward appearance at Gazella's banquet. Whatever the case, if she doesn't know how to behave properly, it means he'll teach her. He shouted at this arrogant woman to know her place, and he started grabbing his pistol. The Duke noticed this and immediately covered Melissa. The knight also did not stand aside. Louis asked Melissa if she was okay. She was very scared, but she said she was fine, because thanks to him, everything worked out. And again, something he'd like to announce today. He wanted to tell them while the spotlight was on them. This is Miss Tanya. This woman is his fiancée, who will soon become the wife of the Duke of Winterfeld. In this regard, the Count must apologize to the lady for his rudeness, or the Duke would see this as a challenge. The Count immediately fell to his knees and began begging for forgiveness. After that, they decided to begin the bidding. All matters were resolved, and the auction proceeded peacefully that night. Isolde's Radiance sold to the highest bidder. Meanwhile, the engagement announcement caused more excitement than she imagined. The maid couldn't understand how the bride could have slept through it. The lady had to hurry, because it was already time for her wedding. Melissa was still in the clouds. Julie asked the lady what she was staring at. The lady said nothing, and Julie added that the lady was simply beautiful. The wedding cake was from Patisserie Rocher. She's not sure exactly, but they say they brought 6 cartloads of roses. Without a doubt, the most beautiful girl here today is Lady Melissa. The thing is, they kept telling each other that she would never meet a man, and now she's getting married, and Julie is so touched. One look at the decorated wedding hall was enough to make her realize reality for the first time. Melissa does indeed become the Duke's wife, or rather, she becomes an accomplice in a crime with Louis Winterfeld. There's no turning back. That's the reality. But a lot of work has been done. The lady completely lost track of time. A whole month has already passed since that situation at the auction. Isolde brought the weapon, but no one was hurt, and she escaped punishment because the mistress decided to let her go. Meanwhile, Lordarian quietly assumed the title of Viscount. He found himself in dire straits and planned to sell all his lands and house to pay off his debts. Well, miraculously, the merchant ship returned just before the sale. What he'd spent years working on was saved. Good news came that they had succeeded in breeding special silk moths, and their competitor had gone out of the business. The blue diamond, or Isolde's Radiance, was bought by a millionaire who was a fan of the singer before she left the stage. All the proceeds from the auction, as well as the diamond, were returned to Isolde. The winning bidder left only a note stating that he did not wish to take away the precious things her late husband had left her. He only wished to offer his sincere support. No one knows this millionaire, but everyone has heard of his deed. Although this stone is still called a jewel that brings parts, but having received this diamond, Isolde was truly grateful. Isolde promised never to forget her master's kindness. She looked incredibly joyful. In other news, as I expected, she saw magic with her own eyes. Ian is the Winterfeld family's mage, Louis's assistant. Maybe she can ask about that emerald or opal she saw earlier. She recalled looking at the duplicate emerald, how the sale had become more difficult, and the investors had backed out. In any case, it seemed this would reach the crown prince. Melissa decided that she would never again allow someone she didn't know to ruin her career. And even the royal family is no exception. Again, a month has passed since then, and today is her wedding to the Duke of Winterfeld. The Duke was very happy when he saw her and said that she was always beautiful, but especially today. He was no less dazzling. The lady thought she had grown accustomed to this handsome face during the month of wedding preparations. Well, it turned out to be harder than it seemed. The lady was afraid he would hear her heartbeat that day. The lady believed that it was because she was almost shot and had an injury, and that was why she had such a reaction as a consequence of the shock. The lady has just arrived, and the guests are coming in one after another. Then they need to leave quietly. Marriage contract. This phrase is confusing. The bride and groom enter. My palms became cold, and every step became more and more difficult. Because she doesn't have a father or any other man to lead her by the hand, they had to change the entrance order a little. Time dragged on like an eternity. The lady had pronounced these two lovers, holding hands, husband and wife, and now they could seal their union with a kiss. Melissa knew she didn't need to be too nervous, since she had already rehearsed this in her head dozens of times. It's not normal to be so worried. My heart is pounding wildly again, so wildly that it's hard. She was sure it must simply be due to nervousness. The maid assumed her mistress was very tired. Melissa confirmed this. But it was just amazing. Of all the weddings Julie had seen, this was the most luxurious, and there were a lot of guests. And the ceremony was incredible. Melissa said it was because it was the Duke's wedding. In reality, she was worried about the disparity between the guests. It was such a relief that the guests' seats were divided and organized according to status. And it was probably Louis who had made the effort. Among the guests were some she was glad to see. But there were also some she wasn't glad to see. The most amazing thing was that His Majesty the King came. He was preparing for the wedding of his beloved nephew, so of course he came. But it seems Louis wasn't expecting it either. He said he wouldn't send a password, but would simply send a gift, as he was very busy with government affairs. In any case, she's glad the wedding went smoothly. Julie noticed that there were fewer reasons to worry, and now all that was left was to get to know the elder Louis. And the most important thing, Melissa asked if she meant the Marquis of Carlyde's mother when she spoke of the elders. That's right, this woman is the Duke's grandmother. She was the one who took care of the Duke when he lost his mother as a child. She is the only one who can be considered senior to the Duke. The lady is currently resting. She asked me to tell her that she was expecting her tomorrow to meet and talk. Melissa was surprised, because it turns out that this person became like a mother to Louis. Although she won't stay in their family for long, it would be good to get along with everyone. Melissa asked Julie what the most important thing was if she didn't meet her eldest today. The maids immediately began to smile and said that my lady was now Her Highness, and she was married, so she was now with the Duke. Melissa wasn't quite sure what that meant. Judy said that then, of course, she should be with the Duke. Because of that kiss, her head is a mess, and he has already forgotten about the existence of the wedding night. She didn't even know if she should insist on the wedding night, because the words of Julie and the maid wouldn't leave her head. The Duke came into her room and said that he saw her in her pajamas for the first time, and remarked that she looked very cute in them. This guy can't keep quiet, really. The lady thought he was telling everyone they were cute. Louis was surprised by this, and asked what she was even talking about, because he would never say such a thing. And I was shocked with you, how she thinks about him, because it's very offensive. Melissa started to say that it wasn't so, and thought that he was joking now. She asked him to stop, to move away, and also suggested that he go to bed already. She said that she would sleep on the sofa, and he could lie down on the bed. And this greatly surprised the Duke. Well, if he didn't understand how this could be, because be that as it may, he is a man with the title of knight, and cannot allow himself to take the bed, leaving the girl on the sofa. He figured she was uncomfortable here, and if that was the case, he could lie down here, and Melissa could lie down on the bed. The girl was shocked by his words, and asked if this could be possible. Louis is his being the Duke, and she will later return to her original status, so she doesn't understand how she can send the gentleman to sleep on the sofa. Louis asked her not to say that, and then he asked her if she thought he would pick on her because of this, because she made him sleep on the couch. If she thinks so, then it's not true. She can just sleep on the bed. Melissa just feels restless. If he's on the couch, she won't be able to sleep. The Duke said that if that was the case, there was nothing he could do. And then he took her in his arms. He offered to sleep with her. Melissa asked the gentleman to promise that he would not even lay a finger on her. Louis said that if she wanted, she could even put the dagger under her pillow. Everything would be fine. He can also borrow something that can cut him up good. The Duke can't let her sleep on the sofa either, so he's not sure there's another option. Besides, when the servants come in the morning, everything will look natural. Melissa still agreed with him, but wanted to say something else, and Louis decided that everything had already been decided and winked at her. The gentleman approached her and asked in her ear if Melissa would touch him in the same way he touched her. The chew is large, so if it lies on the edge, they will not reach each other. But he could have said in advance that he would sleep without clothes. And she also noticed that he really did have the kind of face that made the heart pound. It was his character, or just the situation. But whatever the case, he was published in the newspapers as the kind of groom that any woman would want. Melissa decided to get out of bed and look out the window. It was really strange. Melissa, a girl of ill repute among high society, married the Duke of Winterfeld. She needed a good night's sleep now. In the morning, she realized she had overslept, but thank God, she arrived earlier than the older one. She had heard that this woman was feeling unwell and seemed likely to be very late. The maid informed her mistress that the elder one had arrived. Melissa remarked that she was easily remembered. The woman told her that she didn't need to get up. She could sit. She asked if she was the daughter of the Tanya family. Melissa Tanya. She should now call this woman the Duchess of Winterfeld. The old lady doesn't like doing business with my lady, and she thinks the lady expected it. Unlike her grandson, she was already past marriageable age and had no prestige left. Melissa confirmed that she was completely right in her statements. But even though she's old, she believes in her grandson's insight. She obviously has something special, since her grandson is so enchanted by her. After all, he's been perceptive since childhood. When he makes up his mind, she's powerless to resist him. But a woman must definitely ask the mistress something. She heard that Tanya had a business, and they said that she managed a famous jewelry store in the capital. Well, she covered for her for a while. The woman asked Melissa to drop the matter completely. The fact that she became part of the Winterfeld family indicates that she has risen in status and is forced to take on the corresponding responsibilities. If she had to manage the shop during this time, the woman was not sure that she would be able to pay due attention to her duties as a duchess. Of course, she couldn't answer that she was ready to do this, because the reason she came here was for that very shop. Melissa said she could handle both if she suddenly thought differently. The woman wanted the mistress to prove this to her, but for now, she suggested that they consider that the shop was left behind. The butler noted that the lady had been experiencing a lot since the very first day of her marriage. It's all because there's something that excites her. The earrings the eldest gave her are truly beautiful. It seems to be a wedding present, prepared for my lady. It means the union of lovers is blessed. The maid asked if she wanted to receive a confession from her mother. This was, of course, true, but the butler said that she did not need to try to gain her recognition. The lady immediately remembered how the Duke had said that only a few people knew about their plan. There were 4 of these people, and one of them was the butler. He already knows that their wedding is not real. She may not know this proverb, but for a merchant, trust is more important. The lady said she didn't want to just buy and sell, so she was asking for help. I wonder what kind of person this elder is, and what she needs to do to get her recognition. Louis' grandmother came to visit him, and he was surprised when he saw her. She told her grandson that it was not worth it, but simply asked him to sit down. Grandmother told the Duke that she was no good for them at all. She was very stubborn and patient. These may be her virtues, but Louis knew she was worried. Well, he asks her not to test Melissa. Grandma was surprised by his words. The butler asked the lady if she could come with him. He led her into the room. The lady realized that this room was in the main building, but she still didn't know about this room. It doesn't look like the usual one for guests. This is the room that was used by the late mistress. And here, after the death of the mistress from an unrighteous act, the ancestors of the Duke locked this room. The butler took out the ring, and the lady was very surprised when she saw it. This is a design that was popular 100 years ago. Melissa believed it was the same item worn by her mother and His Excellency the Duke. The day has come when she will become a duchess and move into the house we already. Can't believe it. It seems that a couple of days ago she was still very little. This ring is a gift from Mother Collide to the lady's younger sister. The woman said that she would definitely be happy, but good times did not come for a long time. 3 years after the lady gave birth, she died. The funeral had to be arranged quickly in the summer. Mother lived far in the south. When they heard the urgent news and arrived, everything was already over. This child is the Winterfeld's daughter. Mother loved her niece as if she were her own. The girl also loved her aunt very much. One day, a woman came to her and said that she heard that her niece was marrying the 5th prince, and asked if it was true that she was going to live in his house. Her father has already given her the green light, and all is well. Winterfeld can become an archduchy, and she can marry the man she loves. The girl assured her aunt that she loved him, but in the end, even the niece she cherished so much left her forever. To catch the culprit, the house was turned upside down. At the time, it was unclear who stole or broke the ring. Since this was a quiet lady's thing, they were going to restore it, but he could not find a similar jewel. Melissa decided to find out what kind of jewelry it was. It was pink pearl. When the lady heard about this, she asked again. Dvoretsky tried everything to achieve a similar color, but it didn't shine as brightly as before. He heard that even his mother, while she was in the south, tried for a long time to find pink pearls there, but she was unable to do so. When my mother was young, she dreamed of becoming an official. Apparently, because she wanted to work there, her stay there was not the most pleasant. A lot had happened, so it was as if she thought she couldn't give it all up. Or perhaps he specifically doesn't want to get attached to people. The new mistress, despite the fact that she is absolutely different from the previous ones. Melissa gave her mother her answer. The woman believed she was returning the gift she had given her, and that's the answer. Well, these aren't the earrings the mistress gave her, so she asks her to open the box. The woman realized that it was the ring and the pink pearl that they could not find anywhere. The lady then asked the butler to tell her the story in more detail. So he already said, it was a pink pearl that had a very special glow. Even he had never seen the original. He had heard that the ordinary pearls found in fresh water were completely different. Among the things that were passed down from generation to generation in the Collide family, this was the only one. This ring was mentioned in one of the books in the warehouse. So the lady decided to head straight to the library. There, she was greeted by Remy, who is the Winterfeld family's librarian. Remy asked the lady what book she was looking for. Melissa wanted to see the list of jewels located in Winterfeld. Everything was as she thought, so she decided to come to the Duke. He was very happy when he saw her. He heard that she was busy trying to get his grandmother's recognition, so he decided to ask how everything was going. That's why Melissa came to him. She needs to go to the store for a while, so she asks him to lend her a cart. The Duke was so surprised when he heard about the store and thought she was talking about her own. She said that no one should dare to harm the store during the contract, and even hired knights to maintain its condition. If she's asking for a cart, it must be urgent. The lady said there was one after all, so the Duke agreed with her and also decided to find out if she had already found the answer. Melissa confirmed this with a smile. If only this ring could be repaired, then Mother could truly rid herself of the anger in her soul. The lady told Julie that the jewels that are passed down from generation to generation of aristocrats are not just valuable things. She had heard that maids also received an education, but apparently they had not studied it yet. Real aristocrats who go out in public always use two types of jewelry: those that they acquire by following fashion, and those that are passed down from their elders. New jewelry for aristocrats every season is a demonstration of power and money. This is something that ordinary people can get if they have money. But the most important is the second type of jewelry: family heirlooms, or those passed down to younger family members from highly respected elders. They don't care about fashion or the elegance of the product because they don't use it to demonstrate elegance. These are things to demonstrate kinship and connections. Their family history is such that they honor traditions, or something like that. Julie realized that this ring was one of the Collide family heirlooms. Among the things that the sister inherited was this, which was a wedding gift to her younger sister. Pearls symbolize good health, but pink pearls have a special meaning. Her most beloved person. This ring is like a declaration of love for her mother's younger sister. Apparently, she'll take this as proof of her resolve. Finally, Julie had found what she needed, mistress. Julia asked if the lady knew what this pink pearl meant, and if the lady had it at all. The lady was surprised that she remembered that they once lost all their clients, and for some reason there was interference. The pearls they were going to use then remained untouched, and among them there is one suitable one. It's different from the usual. She found it by accident. She finally found it, and just as she thought, this is it. The glow was just as she remembered it. The lady believed this woman had found their lost pearls. Melissa said that's not true. She just used the same type of pearl, Forget to restore this one." The woman asked again how she restored it, and she also did not understand at all how she was able to find the same one. All these years she had been searching in vain for even one like this, even in the south, where all the pearls are collected. It is not surprising that the lady did not find it in the south, since it is completely different from other cultured pearls. Pink pearls don't come from oysters. But she didn't just say that. They discovered that this wasn't a fabrication or some kind of mistake. They consulted with everyone and studied various documents, but the result was the same. Of course, they don't emerge from the ground, as happens with precious stones. It was undoubtedly a pearl, but not from an oyster, but from a shell. The woman was very surprised. They are not found in this kingdom. They are so rare that they are found only along the southern coast of Asim, and only certain shells can form pearls. 100 years ago, an Assyrian privateer plundered several Annibalian ships, causing tensions between the two kingdoms. Diplomatic conflicts escalated into border fighting. This led to a complete cessation of diplomatic relations between the two kingdoms. From that time on, pink pearls became virtually impossible to find in Annabelle. Even in Asim, it's rare, so it's no surprise that the capital's gemologists knew nothing about it. Actually, Melissa stumbled upon this gem by accident. That day, the supplier asked the lady if she was going to order only corals, and she said that she would change her mind when she saw this. He has something she may never meet again. The lady was surprised when she saw pearls with such an unusual shine. It must be contraband. Now the lady realized they were pearls from a shell. And then I decided to ask her if she had a lot of these pearls. Melissa denied it. I said she only had this one. She was just lucky. And she was lucky when everyone else had abandoned her. The only one she ever had was that one. The woman understood what this meant, that it was such a priceless thing, and she gave it to her. Melissa turned to the lady and told her that she had to understand that she was not as innocent or as sweet as the other young ladies. Of course, she is no longer young and does not possess any title or any other outstanding qualities. She is just an ordinary girl. And it is not surprising that she considers her unworthy of the Duke, who, as she understands, is very dear to her. But she wants to say that she fought for her life much more desperately, more sincerely than anyone she knows. She understands perfectly well that it was not easy for a noble woman to manage a boutique in the very heart of the capital. Melissa can confidently say that she will not be a victim of any conspiracy or plot. Therefore, the lady need not worry. At that very moment, the lady saw her niece standing next to her. People realized she was back where she belonged, so the woman said Louis had met a worthy man. The Grand Marquise is already returning south. Well, that's not true, and she'll remain in the capital for a while longer at the Collided Mansion. Louis turned to Melissa and thanked her for being so kind to his great aunt. All she did was treat the older woman with the respect she deserved. And so, their plan was set in motion. The engagement and wedding were over, so she decided to ask what was next. Suddenly, the lady was inundated with letters, and she didn't want to think about it. The Winterfelds are a noble family, and their house has been without a mistress for a long time, so it is only logical that invitations began to come from everywhere. There would have to be a dozen of them to attend all these parties. Well, this invitation is worth paying attention to. The lady couldn't believe her eyes. The Duke had said that this was exactly it. Now, their next destination is the palace. Palace! Melissa was shocked that they were heading into enemy territory so soon. It even made the Duke laugh. Now that the Winterfields finally have a duchess, it goes without saying that she will be treated with the respect and reverence she deserves. Everyone wants to join the Winterfelds. Well, if she does take part in public events, they expect her to meet His Highness first, and everything will be according to their customs and traditions. The girl now understood what he meant, but she still decided to ask what he meant, and the Duke immediately understood what she was thinking and confirmed it. The lady didn't want to believe it at all, because she was destined for the debutante ball at her age. Now she is no longer the party organizer's errand girl, but a true member of the highest aristocracy, although they had already met His Highness at their wedding ceremony. Being introduced properly as a member of the royal family is basic etiquette. While they are confused by this, their brother can be sanctified by the high priest. The annual royal ball is happening around the same time, so they will be able to meet His Majesty, so there is no need to worry too much. His great-aunt is still an influential woman, and she would be happy to introduce her to others. Melissa understood, and said that if it was inevitable, then she needed to make sure everything went off without a hitch. But now the girl decided to ask when the ball was actually. The Duke said 3. Melissa figured that if it was annual, then there weren't 3 months left, so she thought it would probably be 3 weeks. But Louis said with a smile that it would be 3 days. Melissa was absolutely horrified. I didn't understand what it meant 3 days later. The Duke was thinking about telling her, but she didn't want to distract her while she was trying to calm his great-aunt. The girl told him that this was no excuse at all. 3 days was complete chaos. The gentleman said that in any case, they have everything to prepare her for the new outfit, and there is a teacher who will teach her palace etiquette. As she said, they need to try their best. They will make her perfect. Annabelle's royal palace. The Duke and Duchess of Winterfeld have arrived. Melissa certainly said she would do her best, but she didn't mean to rush things. The maid asked her mistress to try to maintain good posture. The teacher told her that the curtsy should be elegant and scolded the mistress many times. Now she's definitely collected, and Louis is by her side, and frankly, she's more worried about him. Louis asked how the preparations were going. The lady said that he could look at her, while asking how he was. Well, the royal palace had been his home when he was a child, and it wasn't like he'd ever been there again. Just nothing to worry about. And yet, a lot has happened since then. Aside from the motive behind their marriage, she wouldn't blame him if he held a grudge against the royal family. Louis was shocked that Melissa was worried about him. His great-aunt asked you to tell her this, and that the ring should be worn to the ball. The Duke was grateful to her. But a throne is a throne, and only those who are merciless can try to take possession of it. The gentleman asked the Duchess to spare him a minute because he would like to talk to her. The lady said it belonged to her and bowed to His Highness. Roland Annabelle is the only crown prince of this country, and now that she has become Louis's wife, he is her age, and it is not surprising that he came to talk to her. However, she thought that the prince hated dealing with the Duke of Winterfeld's family. He needs to calm down, because she has become a duchess, so even he cannot help but respect her. Melissa said she would be happy to agree if she could arrange an audience with him. The prince was grateful to her and said that he then wanted her to take a walk with him, and he would show her the backyard of the inner palace. The gentleman thought that she was tired from the walk, so he offered her to sit down, since he had not sent her to embarrass her. Melissa was very grateful for the concern, and the prince stared at her and noted that they had met before. There's no one around, and they're walking in circles. So he'll be frank that he's interested in what kind of contract they signed with Louis Winterfeld. Melissa apologized, and the crown prince immediately remembered his father's words that he should marry for love. He doesn't trust Louis, old Louis, because he would never marry for love. He must have chosen her because he wants to get some benefit, so he would like to know what kind of benefit it is. Melissa Winterfeld, formerly Melissa Tani, on the day of their first meeting at Count Gazella's party, he dismissed her as a mere rubber band, out of proportion. Even after the investigation, he found nothing special about her. This woman was born into a noble family, which later found itself in crisis, and business is a disadvantage for aristocratic women. He stared at her. Besides, the appearance of this woman was not very outstanding. Melissa said that it seemed that His Highness knew Louis very well. The crown prince said that he had known him for quite a long time, as they grew up together. An aristocrat doesn't even have the right to live in a palace that belongs to him. The lady believed she was right, and she suggested that the gentleman assume his judgment was correct. They were not lovers, and yet they were in a sham marriage. Since the gentleman knew Louis well, he must understand that he was suspicious. So she believed that it was not easy for him to trust others. If their brother has other goals, then she doesn't even know how she can reveal the Winterfeld secret. He doesn't like Louis and considers him his rival. The prince noted that this was indeed the case. He also asked for forgiveness if he had offended her, oddly enough, but he has no idea about the Duke's charisma. People have been drawn to him since childhood. He picked up Ryan Collinghart on the street. Mog was known to the outside world as a servant of the Duke's palace, but in reality, he was loyal to Louis. The gentleman wants to know only one thing. Is this woman a magician or a chemist? Since she doesn't have those abilities, if she's just like everyone says, the owner of a tiny boutique, then Louis will simply find her a worthy title and accept her as a vassal. If he wants to cement his status, he'll choose a better woman. Many women aspire to become the Duchess of Winterfeld, so he doesn't understand at all why he decided to ask her why he married her. The lady said that since he had doubts, he asked to be allowed to clarify the situation. Melissa has never been into magic or alchemy and knows nothing about it. Perhaps His Highness is afraid, and that is why he behaves this way. Since he had conducted a thorough investigation into the lady, he had long known that she did not possess any special abilities. Judging by the questions he asked, there was something about her that bothered him. But now, I'll check that there's nothing like that, and I'll have to accept the truth. Princip did not understand at all how she dared to behave like that, and that this meant that the Duke had really fallen in love with her, and the marriage was real. It turns out he likes this guy. The prince turned to the Duchess and clenched his fist. He decided to ask about her. Winterfeld was always plotting, and it was usually difficult to understand him. That's why he doesn't think the lady believes in fairy tales like love. He has met a lot of people and thinks he knows them well. They met in a boutique, and later in the mansion of Count Gisela. Now she is the mistress of the Winterfelds. Yes, this madam is right. He did some research, and there is no point in hiding it. The crown prince knows for sure that she values her career as a gemologist most of all, but she had given up her career for marriage, so he believed that Louis had promised her something better. To show her loyalty, she dares to challenge the crown prince. Melissa sighed and told His Highness that, although he claimed to be able to read people, she still felt his inexperience. This was not at all what the prince expected. After these words, he froze and did not understand at all what she had just dared to say to him. The lady asked if he meant to say that people are willing to stay with someone for such a benefit. At least that is the opinion about him. And she thinks so because everyone around her treats him that way. Being loyal to His Royal Highness, he will definitely receive many benefits. He must monitor the well-being of His Highness. Everyone around him thinks so, and he considers it normal. The prince said that relationships between people are initially based on interests, be it a friend, a lover, even a blood relative. This is one of the most basic rules of life. Melissa was simply in shock and told His Highness that she felt very sorry for him. One day he used his power to humiliate her. At a party where they wanted to do this to Louis, they resorted to any means just to close the boutique. The lady heard this from Miss Blanche, but she didn't take it to heart then. But after such a long conversation, she finally realized that he was still immature. The lady apologized for her boldness and said that if he wanted to continue the dialogue, she was afraid she no longer had time. The maid was looking for the Duchess and couldn't figure out where they were. The mistress told him she thought her maids were looking for her, so she said goodbye to him. In the end, the gentleman still didn't understand what it was all about and couldn't believe that he had made a mistake. I want to give someone a gift, that in this world there are people who are ready to judge themselves for others, without receiving anything in return. Then the boy called the maid Mommy, and she turned to him and said that she was just a humble maid, so you can't call her mom. The crown prince did not understand how this was even possible. He plunged into deep thought. The crown prince spat and turned away, deciding to leave there. Meanwhile, Louis came to his wife, and the lady asked if everything had been decided. The Duke thought for a moment and said that it really wasn't that important. Well, he rarely comes to the palace. So many nobles wanted to talk to him. Afterwards, the gentleman sat down next to his wife and asked if something was bothering her. Melissa thought for a second, then said that it wasn't so. Melissa thought about it and said that no matter how noble someone's origins are, they are still just ordinary people. The Duke said that if she dared to say the same in the palace, she would most likely be executed for treason, and she certainly was fearless. Melissa closed the gate and got scared. The Duke laughed and said that he was just joking. She is also a member of the royal family. Even if someone hears it, they will think that she is simply being self-deprecating. The Duke asked his lady if she felt anything when she came to the palace. At first, she thought she would be too nervous and wouldn't be able to speak, but now she doesn't care about anything. Louis knew that she would quickly get used to it. Everything was great here, and many were also stunned at first. Well, once inside, they discovered that there was actually nothing there, so they quickly got tired of the palace. Melissa asked the gentleman if he had any problems with his business today. The Duke laughed at the fact that she was worried about him, and the lady even shuddered at this. Louis noted that they seemed to be worried about each other. It was quite nice to hear. He really had nothing to do today. The Duke went to greet several nobles who wanted to see him. So there are no problems. This is what is called interpersonal relationships. Louis smiled and shrugged, saying that such was the fate of the heir to the throne. Although he is already His Royal Highness, His Majesty has always been merciless to his son. The nobles have to decide whose side to take. Some deliberately want to get closer to the Duke, but for him it's not so bad. The lady knows that His Highness has always hated him, and that he has an extremely bad character. After this, the gentleman laughed even harder, and even choked with laughter. Melissa couldn't understand how he could say such things about him, because what would happen to him if someone heard? Goetze continued to smile, but agreed not to talk like that anymore. In that case, he offered her one last task. She still doesn't quite understand. The church doesn't have much influence in Annabelle, so meeting with the priest is little more than a formality. Well, she feels that the palace still takes receiving blessings seriously. The Duke said there was a hidden agenda at work here. Then he touched the book. This blessing is very effective. The lady took the book and narrowed her eyes. The great temple houses a divine object that is the object of powerful magic. Currently, it is one of the few surviving divine vessels. Blessed by them, one will be able to avoid danger. The vessels are typically used at the coming-of-age ceremony of the royal family and their immediate family. Well, sometimes at weddings too. The lady couldn't even imagine such a thing. She suddenly remembered how the crown prince asked her if she really wasn't a wizard or an alchemist. She noted that it seems that magic is all-powerful and everyone is afraid of it, and magicians are considered sacred. The Duke believed that this was because it was invisible and incomprehensible to most, and no one shared how it worked. Things used to be different, when there were countless wizards in the kingdom. The Duke said that his wife would definitely like the sacred objects once she saw them with her own eyes. Melissa didn't quite understand why he was so sure of that, but the gentleman laughed and said that they were simply magnificent with so many precious stones. After he spoke about the precious stones, the lady even asked again, because she was interested. She was also interested in whether she would be able to see them in the temple. The Duke smiled and said that of course it was, adding that one of them had magical powers. Suddenly, a man approached the gentleman and said that something serious had happened. Louis decided to ask what was going on. The problem was that the holy statue wasn't working. The gentleman decided to ask what he meant by this. It wasn't so easy to explain after all. The man said that they were just waiting and preparing for the ceremony, as usual, but the statue did not react to this in any way. When they realized this, they decided to report it. The Duke realized he'd have to inspect it himself, so he suggested they go inside. Melissa was very surprised when she saw the very same holy statue and asked the gentleman if it was a real statue. Louis confirmed it. She was so beautiful that the lady could not take her eyes off her. Louis noted that, after all, it is the national treasure of the kingdom. It appeared many, many years ago, and creating something like this using the technology of that time must have cost an incredible amount of money. The Duke decided to ask when the statue had last been used. It was about 4 months ago. Everything was working fine on the day of the New Year's celebrations, so the Duke decided to ask who had been here since then. To find out, they will have to check the records, but not many people came to the temple. None of the unclean ones have been here, or had contact with the statue. Melissa decided to ask later what was going on. The Duke hadn't really studied the statue, especially not so close. She looks the same as before, and there is not the slightest hint of magic. Melissa noted that all the priests claim that if the statue does not activate, it means it has lost its magical power. Gemstones are forged under high temperature and pressure for a long time. That's why they're perfect for imbuing magic. Some jewels are special. For example, the same thing applies to the Isolde's Splendor case. They're very resistant to me, so their power can't suddenly disappear. Well, unless someone deliberately interfered. There can only be 2 versions. Either magic was used to further destroy it, or the stone itself is a fake. Melissa was very surprised when she heard about the fake, and said that the original could have been somehow replaced with a fake. The statue is connected to the ground, and it would be extremely difficult to pull it out by force, so the swindler would definitely be noticed. So, that means only the stone was replaced. Melissa was surprised that only that was stolen. She definitely had it, of course she did, but it lost its magical power. Melissa turned to Louis and asked if he had any guesses on this matter.